welcome to Australian Survivor Archives, the only podcast daring to go over the complete history of Australian Survivor from Whalers Way to the current day. And we are in for a big episode today. I'm so excited to get into our second episode of Season 2 Celebrity Survivor and chat to a person that I think could be the best interview all season. It's only episode 2 of season 2, but I'm calling it right now because our guest today is really going to fill in a lot of blanks. We talked a lot last week about how we didn't know a lot about this season and how our next guest will help us fill in a lot that we don't know. And I'm putting all the pressure on him right now before we even get started. But I'm not going to introduce him. I'm going to say that my name is Ben Waterworth, and I'm excited for my beautifully bald, shiny-headed co-host that I'm staring at right now to continue on with this great little introduction that I'm trying to get to.
Hi, Ben. Hi, listeners. It's fantastic to be here. As you know, my name's Matt Dyson. And, Ben, this is a massive episode. And look, I think you're spot on. This could be one of the biggest of the seasons. We're doing things a little different. As you know, last year in Season 1, we had a great interview with the Season 1 executive producer, Stephen Peters. And today we bring you the executive producer from Season 2, the celebrity version of Australian Survivor. This man has been involved in plenty of reality TV, from shows like The Mole, Who Dares Wins. That's just to name a few. But today we're here strictly to talk to him about his involvement in Celebrity Survivor Season 2. I talk of none other than Mr. David Mason. David, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much indeed. And, a little bit intimidating intro. I hope I can deliver.
Well, we're gonna hold you to see how much you can deliver, because I feel Stephen Peters last season was a little bit like, I don't know what I'm going to remember, and he got the memories out of the brain. So we're really going to dig here, David. We're really going to get inside that brain and really try and get all the goss and the information out of you here today.
I'll see what I can unearth.
It's interesting because Matt obviously mentioned in his introduction there about how, you've got a STEAM background with so many different shows, The Mole, Who Dares Wins, Pop Stars, some real staples of Australian reality television that really kind of set the industry on its path that it is today. But how did you even get involved in producing itself, David? Was this something that had always interested you? Kind of what led you down the garden path to producing?
Yeah, okay, this goes back. When I was aged 8, lived in New York,
wow.
Saw different types of TV, anything I'd ever seen before, and I thought, I want to make TV like that. I didn't want to be on it, I wanted to make it. And it just kicked off from there, and I did lots of theatre and all that sort of stuff, but making TV was what I wanted to do. And more than that, having my own production company that I wanted, from the age when I realised what a production company was, and the type of show I wanted to make was really Who Dares Wins. That was it. That was my pinnacle. That's the kind of show, as a kid, I wanted to make. Crazy stuff, having an opportunity to do fun stuff. So that, then and The Mole and Survivor, and Beyond 2000 before that, just traveling and making fun stuff with fun people. It's just been a massive ride. And we always said, if you're not having fun on set, how the hell is the audience going to have fun? And that's been a mantra all the way through.
Well, it's amazing, David, because all those shows you just mentioned were all shows that I watched growing up. So you were clearly in the thick of things, with your production company and all that, and doing TV. So it's amazing. Like just here, even Beyond 2000, that was a show that I grew up watching.
It was an absolute heyday of TV in a way that almost can't exist now. TV then was on a pedestal. It's what families came together to watch. You sat down, you watched at a specific time. And once the show is over and you go to work or school or whatever the following day, you all talk about it. Now, of course, with streaming, with social media, you're either talking about it while you're watching, or you're binge watching. You go to work, no one else has watched it, or they haven't watched it yet, or you can't talk about it anymore. So that heyday in the 80s, the 90s, early 2000s was just spectacular. And because TV was on that sort of pedestal, it had no competition. We had the money to make good shows like that. TV was also courageous. There were some really courageous decisions being made about programming, about commissioning shows. In a way now, networks can't be as courageous. And it's disappointing. It's a fact of life. It's just the nature of the business, the way it ebbs and flows. But back then, 20 plus years ago, the world was our oyster.
Which it makes it so fascinating to be involved in shows, I can imagine, like Who Dares Wins, The Mole, these sort of shows. Before even the terminology reality TV was a thing, you mentioned to us off air, like you didn't call Who Dares Wins reality television. And yeah, I'm with Matt. I remember watching them as a kid. They were event, you'd sit around with the whole family, you would get hooked on it. And I was talking to you off air about how the Mole is the reason why we're even here today talking about Survivor. I wouldn't watch Survivor if it hadn't have been for me watching the Mole.
The Mole predates Survivor by about 3 years.
Yeah. And I mean, the first season aired in Australia the same year, of course, as the US season 1 in Borneo, because they maybe even intersected. I can't remember quite the air dates, but it was so fresh.
I can absolutely tell you, because when I was filming the first series of the Mole in Tasmania, I heard about this British show called Expedition Robinson, I think it was called.
Yep.
And I thought, wow, that sounds amazing. And I got on the phone to Charlie Parsons. So he had a company then, Planet 24, with Bob Geldof. I got on the phone to them. I'm in Tasmania. It's late at night, and I'm on the phone to them saying, hey, can we get the rights? And they said, actually, we've just started talking to CBS and this guy, Mark Burnett, and until all that's tied up, we're not going to be talking about any other rights.
Wow.
And I said, well, just keep us posted. I want this show. And of course, by the time CBS got it, they, in effect, controlled world rights on the brand.
That's amazing. So even from that early stage, obviously with your background in this, you knew that Survivor was going to be, or like you said, it wasn't known as Survivor back then, but you knew that this concept for a show was going to be a massive hit.
I think it was because we just started filming The Mole, and we had no idea how it was going to work out. We had no idea really how these shows were meant to be made. So we were just winging it. And there could be a whole series, frankly, on how we got away with it. But we were winging it. But I thought there's something exciting here about not having complete control of a TV show. Normally, we have complete control. In a show like this or the Survivor, you don't have control, and that makes exciting TV. So when I heard about Expedition Robinson, as it was, I thought that's got the same degree of lack of producer control. Having said that, the producer always has control with God. We manipulate, we pull the strings. But meanwhile, you pull the strings in such a way that you have to allow unpredictability to make the gold. Yeah. So you create unpredictability, if you can put it like that. And so when clearly Survivor has that ability to create unpredictability. And I fell in love with it from the get-go.
What I love hearing that you rang Charlie Parsons up on the first season of The Mole is that you were this close maybe to getting the rights. Maybe Survivor, the phenomenon it is today, could have been an Australian branded product, and this could have all happened from Tasmania, that you would have basically been in Tasmania.
Look, I'm flattered you say that, but it would have been dreadful. Frankly, the money CBS put into it made it a phenomenon. I mean, completely. The difference in budgets, I mean, Stephen alluded to the Channel 9 budget. I'm happy to talk further about how much.
It's on the question list. Don't worry.
Yeah, the difference in budgets really transforms shows in a way that is quite hard to comprehend about how money can make a show. And we're talking factors of 10. Australia would never been able to, never wanted to put that kind of money in, never could put that kind of money in, and so would have ended up with an okay show, not a phenomenon. What the US did, what Burnett and CBS did to Expedition Robinson was to turn it into a phenomenon.
So with season 1, obviously that was on Channel 9, we now know that it didn't have a big budget, and what you're saying is right, that they couldn't match what the Americans were doing because they had a budget basically 10 times that. But did you actually watch season 1? And considering the budget they had, I mean, you're probably one of the best people to talk about this. Like, we think that considering it was such a small budget, they did a damn good, a pretty good job, considering we now know the small budget to run and operate one of these reality shows. Like, what's your thoughts on season 1?
When Stephen was doing series 1, I'd already produced 2 series of Treasure Island, which is a sort of lame version of Survivor without the voting. Survivor without the good bits.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we'd done a couple of series, one for New Zealand, one for Australia. And so I was pretty used to filming on an island with a bunch of contestants, trying to make them make interesting TV. And so I knew how to, a lot of the pitfalls, and a lot of the little techniques. So combining a bit of Treasure Island with the Mole. So you've got the games, you've got the gameplay, you've got the surviving, frankly, with limited resources and what that does to people. Well, I knew the elements of then how to make Survivor. One of the things a producer is juggling with a show like Survivor is being true to the concept of you're on your own, while still knowing that actually you're on your own, but also we're making TV and we need you to be good talent. People cannot be good talent if they're starving, if they are absolutely subsisting, frankly, with food and other resources or whatever. They're not going to be good TV. They're exhausted, and they just cannot give. So you have to create an environment which is illusory, where they are surviving, but still they have enough energy and enough to give. And we learned that several times in Treasure Island. So when we were doing Survivor several years later, we obviously had to bring that to play. You're creating an illusion, but you're never conning the audience. That's the other contract, if you like.
And when you then are watching either the Australian one or the US one, and with all that in mind, what you were saying, are you kind of watching that from an EP's perspective, thinking, oh, I would do it this way, I would do it this way, or maybe if you tweaked a few things, you could do it differently? Or what are you thinking when you're watching
frankly,
it?
There's very little of the US show. There's very little you do different. I mean, look, who would we be to say, do things different or better? They've done over 18 seasons or something of it.
They're up to 40, season 40 now. Yeah.
I mean, what they don't know about how to make this show, and how on earth they can keep on repeating it and keep on getting good material most of the time, is extraordinary. I mean, the skill that goes into it, and it's not just the skill in producing and storytelling. As in the cinematography, in the games, in the art direction, in the casting, they still get it right 9 times out of 10.
Were you ever approached to do the season 1 season?
No. I had my own production company then. Nine was going to do that in-house. That was a time when just about everything was in-house. So no, they wouldn't have commissioned anyone to do it. Seven commissioned my company to make The Mole for them as an outside production, or the first few series. The last series was an in-house. I was still EP working at Seven, but the last series, The Mole, was in-house. But no, I had my own company before that.
With that, I mean, we obviously know that Channel 10 has Endemol Shine doing Survivor presently. Besides the obvious of if a network has its in-house production, they obviously, I guess, have complete control over how a season works. And if they've got a third-party company producing a season, it's a little bit different. I mean, does that, from your perspective of your company producing a show like this, does that make the process easier? Like, you've got kind of free range? I mean, how much liaison do you have with Seven in the creative process before this even gets started, when they come to you and say, hey, would you like to produce this show?
Constant. They're your client. You're making a show for them. It's not, some sort of indulgent thing. You want to make the best show for them, to their expectations. You want to exceed their expectations. So you've got to know what their expectations are, so you know how to exceed it. You don't want to give them any surprises, unless they're good surprises. You're going to constantly come up with difficulties, things that you're going to have to overcome when you're making it. You need to have the network on your side when you come across these difficulties. They're not necessarily budgetary, but they're creative, say. So the rapport that a production company has with a network executive, and I imagine at 10 it's still Stephen Tate, who's the network EP. Stephen used to be one of my series producers on Who Dares.
Oh, wow.
Many years ago. So everyone goes round and round in these circles. But that rapport is so absolute, that connection. If you don't have that, then you're never going to make good TV. You're going to be at loggerheads. And you've got to listen to the network. They know what they're doing. And I've been obviously a network EP, so I've been on that side as well, as a production company side. You've got to listen to each other. And the network EP's got to listen to the production company as well. Think, actually, we think this is the best way to go, or we think we'll get this out of such and such. It's all a dialogue.
Before I get into a little bit more about the process and how Celebrity Survivor came about, with your production company, I mean, you obviously have done a lot of Channel 7 shows. Do you have a contract with the network, or do you it just happens that Channel 7 liked what you did, so they came to you a lot?
I used to work at Channel 7 as an EP, and this goes back to the early 90s. And I was having a drink with a friend, a chap called Adrian Brandt. We were tossing around different shows, and we thought, he said, we thought, let's think of a show where, we challenge people to do things. We talked about that for a lot. And then thought, what, challenge is a bit of a weak word. I like the word daring. Because you've got a bit of edge with the word dare. So, okay, as we were playing golf, we hit a few more, I call golf whack fuck. Went through a few more holes and tossing around and said, what, this dare thing, what do we call it? I don't know, a few more holes, and suddenly I said, who dares wins? Oh, yeah. By the time we'd finished that round of golf, we pretty much had the format in our heads about how this thing would work. I then pitched it to the network. I'm an inside EP, but my contract allowed me to pitch things from outside, as it were. The network wouldn't own anything I pitched. So I pitched it. Within 2 weeks, they said, we're going to commission a pilot. So I resigned. set up our own production company. The pilot got through. Then the first series. We thought, we got it made. We did 13 series for the thing.
Jeez, wow.
Anyway, so my relationship with Seven started from that. In fact, it was Seven that brought the mole to me. Tim Warner at the time. And he said, we love this show. David, do a proposal study for it. So I did that, wrote it all up, sent it off about a month later, and they commissioned it. And that was, I said off air a bit earlier, being the executive producer of The Mole is one of the best jobs on TV because you are God. No one else, only you and The Mole know who The Mole is. No one else.
Not even the other producers, so just the EP and the... Wow.
No. So no producers, no crew. Grant didn't know. No one at the network.
Wow.
Just me and The Mole.
That must be fun.
You feel like God. Feel like God.
Do you just have like constant little... I guess you couldn't have conversations with The Mole because if all of a sudden I see one of the contestants always with the EP, it's a bit obvious then, isn't it?
Yeah. The only way I could communicate, I would do the interviews every evening alone. No crew.
Right.
So I'd do the interviews with all the contestants, but with The Mole, I'd say, okay, download. This is what I'm get back, and then do the interview. Now, interestingly, by about series 5 or 4, whatever it was, the crew who were in another room would come back, change over tapes, and they realized that although we'd been in the room for 40 minutes, only 20 minutes of tape had been used. So they realized, okay, well, we know who The Mole is. So they discovered like that.
I know we're not here to talk about the mole, but now
No.
I'm absolutely fascinated. So how did you go about then, like, because obviously you were the one that picked who was going to be the mole. Was it just on their personality, or how did you go about actually picking who the mole was going to be?
Okay, here's the thing. I have never talked about this because, frankly, there might be another series. No, there won't be another series. So now I can actually tell you. I can talk about it for the first time. I would actively seek people. They're outside of the auditions.
Oh, wow.
Actively seek people who had amazing integrity.
Wow.
So in order to be deceitful, you have to have integrity.
Mm-hmm.
Because frankly, I need you to have integrity with me because I've got to trust you absolutely. So I needed someone I could absolutely trust. And then we insert them into the audition process. And the audition process, part of it was I had absolute veto.
Wow.
So the network as well, but I had absolute veto. If for any reason I wanted someone on the cast, my word went, no matter what the network said, just so that I could plant the mole.
Wow.
Anyway, and that never happens in any other show. So I would find people through different processes who had that kind of integrity, that had displayed it or had, through different acts or different organizations, had those values. Then I put them through the process and psych test them along with everyone else and hope to hell they don't flunk it, because then I'm stuck. And then insert them in like that. But they had to go through the full audition process because, frankly, everyone else did.
Yeah. That's crazy. And like, you're really making me, David, want to do a spin-off here of like, Australian Mole Archives or something like that. Because I was mentioning you off air, it has honestly been years since I've seen it. It's not a show I've ever rewatched. And I believe, at one point I know it was on YouTube because I did see it pop up once. But, that led me down a fandom of reality TV. It led me on a very unsettling amount of fandom for Grant Bowler. That man is absolutely incredible.
He was a bit of genius casting.
Oh.
Not by me, by I think it was probably Brad Lyons and Tim Warner who cast him. And it was genius casting.
Well, I was going to actually ask you that. I was going to say, what was your involvement with not only Grant's casting, but then with Celebrity Survivor with Dicko being casted? We're interested to know about that as well.
Okay. So Steve and I know talked about, they had a sort of 9 months run up to making, We had 6 weeks.
Wow.
6 weeks from the decision to make it to rolling cameras. 6 weeks.
6 weeks.
Crazy.
I mean, it's just insane.
They play Survivor longer than that now, David, on Channel 10. They literally play the game longer than that.
Yeah. Well, and we shot in 15 days.
Yeah.
But we'll talk about all that later. But so 6 weeks. As a rush decision, there's a programming hole in 3 months' time. We're going with Celebrity Survivor. I didn't cast Dicko. I don't think he was right for the show. I don't think anyone thought he was right for the show. But he'd just come off Idol. 7 had nabbed him, didn't want him on 10 on Idol, so nabbed him and didn't have a show for him. So, right, we'll chuck him on this. So he was available. He was signed for the network. Let's get him doing this show. He was a fish out of water. But, the show still, it worked in its own way with him there. But, he was a fish out of water.
I would be intrigued. I want to get to the point about that 6 week period and sort of how it came about in a sec. But you say you don't have an input into Dicko as a host, but as someone who I guess is involved in these shows, you've worked with a variety of hosts. Would you have had an ideal candidate on Seven's, payroll at that point if you had have had a chance to put a few names in the hat?
Whoa, rewind 15 years. To be honest, I don't remember even thinking about an alternative because Dicko was just handed to us saying, this is what he's going to be doing. We need to keep him on the network highlight him, promote him. He's going to be the host. Go with it.
You know, it would actually be quite interesting in hindsight, Grant Bowler. I mean, he was a great host of The Amazing Race. Kind of, it was a bit more light-hearted than he was on The Mole. But, I mean, kind of that balance, Grant Bowler would have been a great Survivor host.
I think at the time Grant was in LA.
Right.
Pursuing his more of his acting.
He was probably lost about that time. He was getting killed as a ship captain on the boat on the way to the island.
Yeah. And also we'd just done the... the final series that we did for 7 on of The Mole with Tom Williams, which was again
rubbish,
a casting mistake.
He took his shirt off and Dancing with the Stars, and all of a sudden everybody loved him, right? So it was kind of like, come on.
Yeah. Not the world's best with the cast. Again, fish out of water, and the audience thought so as well.
The one thing we spoke about, Ben and I, in our first episode for this season was a lot around Dicko, and you can compare him to the other 2 hosts of Australian Survivor. So we had Lincoln Housen in the first season. He was sort of a muscly, not over muscly, but he was that sort of rugged sort of bloke. You then look at Jonathan LaPaglia now, great shape. He looks like he hits the gym every day. Where Dicko, he doesn't have that physique. He's a
man of the people.
Yeah. And look, I have to admit though, after watching it, you think to yourself, well, it is a celebrity version, and you know what? It's something a bit different. I actually, in the end, I didn't mind Dicko as a host. I think, you know what? I wouldn't have liked to see him on a normal season, but on a celebrity season, fair enough. The problem I think Ben and I have discussed is he was almost the biggest celebrity on the season.
Yeah, fair enough. Good call. Absolutely, he was. Yeah.
Which
he outshone the contestants.
Yeah.
We'll talk about the casting, of course, but it's funny. As Matt's alluding to, Dicko's really grown on me over the years, kind of in the season. It's fascinating. We talked a lot during season 1 about how obviously the season has grown on us. We obviously very much appreciate it. We'll talk about that with your season here, of course, today. But
the season's grown on you.
Trust. We'll get to it. But Dicko, it's kind of the rapport Dicko has, and kind of just his mannerisms, his sayings. He's not afraid to kind of give shit to David Oldfield, or even some of the little digs he has at some of the female contestants sometimes. I mean, that wouldn't hold up today, but I mean, was Dicko given kind of free reign to kind of just be Dicko?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you have someone who has appeal, so you're not going to knock the appeal and try and squeeze him into I was going to say round peg into a square hole, but that's a bit too so you're going to use everything that he has that gives him that appeal. And we'd often do 2 takes of everything. It's pretty standard. You do one which is loose and one which is tight. One, let rip, say what you like, put in your own words. Another, okay, let's just tighten it more into this. And you might cut between the 2, or you might use one. But you've always got a fallback of a safe zone if you need it. And I think if I look back, the casting of Dicko as being the most well-known of all those celebrities was actually deliberate as well. In that, unlike normal Survivor, when you're dealing with celebrities, they have bigger egos than most, and you've got a lot to deal with. So having someone who on camera who can deal with those egos, I mean, I had to deal with them off camera, but someone on camera dealing with those egos was useful. Otherwise, they'd just walk all over him or her.
Was it his idea or your idea or somebody's idea to do the whole play hard, play safe, play to win in the challenges?
The original saying, and I couldn't actually remember what it was, play hard, play to win, whatever. We wanted to use outwit, outlast, outplay. We weren't allowed to.
Right.
Because that was CBS owns that. We weren't allowed to use that. We had to think of something else. I mean, having a phrase or something is always going to be used, like a catchphrase. He came up with that, I think. I can't remember, probably. We thought, let's just run with that. That'll work.
A lot of what has come out on why this even was a thing, was that Channel 7 exploited a loophole, essentially, with the contract that, Channel 9 had the contract to the US version. I believe they still held the rights to any local versions. But Castaway had a loophole that essentially was you can produce a celebrity one without a contract. Now,
that's a different format.
A different format. So were you privy to kind of that contract and kind of how Channel 7 basically had what they had essentially at a gap in the thing? They went through it and hey, let's exploit this.
I came into it once the deal had been done.
Right.
But I understood, and I had conversations with Julia Dick at Castaway about, so what is Celebrity Survivor? How is it different? And ultimately she said, look, it's no different. It just uses celebrities, so therefore it is going to be different. But frankly, same rules apply. And by the way, you can't use the logo, you can't use the slogans, you can't use the music, but everything else, yeah, try to keep it like the show. That's pretty much as simple as that.
So, what is their definition of celebrity then?
Well, clearly, I think what we thought is someone who the public might have heard of. The bar was pretty low.
Well, again, we'll talk about the casting because it is fascinating. Matt and I talked a little bit last week about how, and again, this is a topic for later on, but how a lot of people, Australian Survivor fans, disregard your season completely because, like, oh, celebrities, it doesn't count. But obviously Channel 10 now have twice had a Champions vs Contender season. Matt was on a Champions vs Contender season, which is essentially a half celebrity, half normal person season. So it's fascinating that that was a loophole to allow another network to do it, yet Channel 10 will kind of do it but slightly differently, and yet people consider it a normal season. It's kind of different periods of time, but it's strange.
Castaway was playing it both ways. So they were getting their fees from two different networks in one country, in one territory at the same time. Thank you very much. And I think they felt that the celebrity version, which is not the real version, is wouldn't destroy the original format in any given territory. And I think to some extent they're right. That if Seven had renewed it and had it ongoing, it would have probably would have tainted the brand, no question, because it's not the same. It's not played in the same way. And, a lot of that and a lot of those stories I'll happily tell you about how it's different. But it would have tainted the brand. It really would.
By the time you came on board, had it already been decided that it was going to be 12 contestants and 25 days? Or so was that? How did that come about that it was only going to be a 25-day Survivor?
Budget. Couple of things. One, budget. Two, you're dealing with, we're going to call them celebrities, people who have managers, people who have, frankly, commitments above and beyond what, frankly, people with day-to-day jobs have. So getting those kind of people for even 24, 25 days is a stretch. So we knew we've got to cap it. 25 days, 2 days per show, plus another day at the head, while we all get started. 12 eps. Okay, how many people do you need for 12? I think it's 12 eps, 12 or 13. How many people do you need for 12 eps? Work backwards, 15. Shit. How are we going to get 15 people? So I then thought, okay, how many can we get? And by the way, the cast was finalized 36 hours before cameras rolled.
Look, we're going to take up a lot of your time talking about the cast because there's one thing in particular that I really hope that you're going to finally help us get to the bottom of it. And that's the inclusion of the 12th contestant, non-celebrity on the show, but we'll get to that. But we've heard some fascinating stories already about people who were going to be on the show, a possible female tennis player who didn't get on the plane and didn't turn up and then had to go back to another. So, yeah, you're right. You just said it went to the last 36 hours. So what was that whole process like? It must have been a nightmare. Here you are trying to get this reality TV show started and you already don't even know who's actually, is set in stone about who's going to be in the show.
A difference between Celebrity Survivor and Survivor is that the absolute dynamics of the cast are less important. In True Survivor, the dynamics are all important. They are going to create everything on the show. Celebrity Survivor, there's a bit of perv value of it's the Jungle Show of what's it called?
I'm a Celebrity.
Show. I'm a Celebrity. Is that kind of concept of fish out of water, celebs out of water? Looking at them, frankly, either in deep shit or looking glam in bikinis and buff. So you've got that appeal, which you don't normally have on a normal Survivor because you don't know these people, but these people are celebs you're supposed to know. There's that. Secondly, as celebrities being media savvy, they're kind of inevitably going to hold back a bit from what they do and what they say and how they react because their ongoing careers are absolutely affected. So, the dynamics, getting the right group together isn't as important, isn't as vital as with conventional Survivor. So the actual cast didn't matter. To me, up until that point, I needed the bums on seats. I needed the numbers. And I hate that they're really camera fodder. That's what they are. You're going to get up there, we're going to do stuff, we're going to get you to do stuff, you're going to do stuff, you're going to say stuff, and we're going to shoot it. So I know, the thing about Survivors, the show's going to work. Unless you have a complete disastrous cast. But with celebs, you never know you're not going to have a disastrous cast. You just want a few highlights, a few people really to stay in there because they are going to be gold. Everyone else, they'll just get eliminated. We'll get rid of them quickly or whatever. So I wasn't worried. I knew that we'd be able to get around it. And if I can just talk to you about Ben, the SAS guy, why is he there? Bums on seats.
Okay.
Just to get another person in there that we didn't have to pay as much.
Okay. So David, this is one thing that, and this is what I want to get to the bottom of. So I've always said, and this is pure speculation, that you had 12 people, 12 celebrities set. Someone at the last second has pulled out, and there's been a scramble to get someone, and they're like, hey, here's Ben Wynn. He's a former SIS guy. Just get him in there and put him in, and we'll get him out straight away. What? Because it never made sense. He was never playing for a charity.
There was so much of that show that doesn't make sense.
But he never started the game. He was never playing for a charity. What was Ben Wynn doing on Celebrity Survivor?
Okay. And this is from my memory from all that time ago. Two things. One, he was a lot cheaper than a celeb. So we had a budget. We could buy 12 celebs, and that's it. We needed more bums, which is why we had people coming back into the show, obviously. But I needed someone else. The numbers just weren't going to work. So we thought, okay, in a bit mole-esque, we'll chuck a spanner in a couple of eps in, and ideally, this buff-looking, supremely able bloke will go into the girls' team and just kick up a bit of. That was all the idea. That's all thinking. Just chuck in something unexpected. And the thing about Celebrity Survivor, because there were no real rules, we were able to be looser with the format, such that it was. We could play around like that. And I know it's. I'm an absolute Survivor fan and absolutely beholden to the integrity of Survivor and really didn't want to fuck around with the format. Don't fuck the format. On the other hand, we kind of had to a little bit. And it pains me that we introduced things like that, and bringing contestants back, which we'll talk about later. Fucking the format like that was not good for the show. It was not good for Survivor as a whole.
So just getting back with Ben, where did he actually come from? Because I'm assuming, I've tried to track Ben down, and it's almost like he doesn't exist. I started to think maybe it was a false name they used, and this isn't true. They call me the Bloodhound, David, on this show. I can track down everyone and anyone. Ben Wynn is like a ghost. It's like he doesn't exist. There's no footprint of him ever existing on this planet. So which started to get me to think, well, there must be more to it. Is that even his real name? Is he a former SIS guy? And how did he even come to get on the show? Like, I'm assuming he didn't have an agent where someone's like, oh, here's this bloke, because he wasn't a celebrity. So did someone know him, or I even started to think maybe he was the guy that was going to be giving the survival tips to the celebrities, and then the next second he's getting a Guernsey and saying, mate, you're on the show. It just doesn't make sense.
I cannot, I hate to say it, I cannot remember. Where the hell did he come from? I think I might have come across him from The Mole. He might have been a contestant, possible contestant on The Mole. So he might have been in my books. But to be honest, I can't remember. For us, he was no big deal. It was no big deal. It was just another person to make up the numbers so we could get to the 13 eps.
Well, David, I think I'm going to need you to go back through those books, because I need a contact number or email or something. Because I tell you, it is my life mission to talk to Ben Wynn, because I need to talk to him. So just to find out what the hell, like what his experience was even being on this celebrity show when he's not a celebrity. So if you have any details for him, definitely would love to hear that.
I've just gone into my address book, because, address book's lost. He's not there. Sorry.
Oh. Well, it's been a great time having you on the show today, Dave. We're only using you for one thing, so thanks for your time on Australian Survivor Archives. You fat lot of good you are. I want to talk about the casting process, but just one thing you alluded to there, and I'd just like to touch on. You mentioned, of course, Castaway say you can't use this phrase, you can't use your music, all that kind of stuff. We know a lot of similar problems happened with Channel 9 version. When it comes to the rules, though, one thing that Stephen Peters, of course, alluded to was that they weren't given a rule book. They weren't given a handbook at all. They were basically like, here are the keys, go for a drive. Had that changed by 2006? Were you given any sort of groundwork at all?
No.
Wow.
And I was desperate. I was desperate to get it, because I wanted to know, to be in keeping with Survivor, I wanted to know the basics of, okay, what do we do about water, about toilets, about sunscreen, about mosquito repellent? Are those things forbidden? No rules, nothing. So I thought, okay, we're making TV. A bit of safety and a bit of, frankly, TV. Water, got to have fresh water. Okay, we're not going to have water in plastic bottles. We'll cover them all up, but fresh water, given. Sunscreen, safety, that's a given. Off camera, but you're going to be creaming up. Mosquito repellent. I thought the last thing we want is anyone on camera with bumps all over themselves, scratching themselves. It's ugly television. So you know what? Mosquito repellent, all yours. So things like that. There was no rules, but we thought just common sense. We want people to be thinking of other things other than their basics. Toilets, you know what? There's going to be a dunny. It's a long drop. Okay, we don't need to know about it, but it's there. Sanitary products, yeah, you know what? Health, they're available for you. So stuff like that, all the off-camera stuff is available. But the actual living conditions, the living on the beach or in the bush, making your own tents and stuff, all that's legit, all that's genuine.
Wow. There's ins and outs about it, because one thing that we did learn a little bit more about recently, Guy Leach did an interview with David Jeanette on his podcast recently, and talked a lot about kind of some things like you mentioned the long drop. That was something I was unfamiliar with. Amber talked a little bit about us over on the Oz Network about sort of ins and outs and that, because I think a lot of people, and I'm sure you got it at the time, the celebrities got it all the time, were probably thinking, well, behind the camera, because this is a celebrity version, they're probably sleeping in a bed and it's all for show. So it's unique. And I guess that kind of leads me to the casting process, because I would be intrigued to know with that. Were there people that maybe you sat down and wanted and you told them this and like, no, fuck off, I'm not doing that then? I mean, how, again, you might not have been involved, so please stop me here if you weren't, but do you have a wish list? Do you kind of get given a list of 50 people? Here are the potentials. Like, how does that all work to get to those 12?
So a couple of things. I mean, it's a chicken and egg thing. You have a dream cast. And then you have a cast that you think you can afford, because obviously they're paid. So you basically knock off the top of who you'd like. And mostly the people you'd like, the A-listers, frankly, A, you can't afford them, and B, they're so busy, you're never going to get them for 25 days. And C, frankly, their managers wouldn't let them go near us with a barge pole. So, you're in a median. The people who are coming to you saying, pick me, are probably the people you really don't want to pick because they're running out of options. So you're left with people, so sports stars, soap stars, things like that, who are, just coming off the crest of their career. That's kind of how it goes. So they're people, they've been around enough, so they're familiar faces, but they're not, frankly, making much of a quid at the moment. In fact, some of them have retired from TV or sport or whatever, and this is just, they've come back to do something different for change. So that's kind of where you start looking. And you want some interesting people, a bit of left field stuff, and some of your basic people. But in the conversations that we started to have very, very quickly, for obvious reasons, with them or their managers, the first question would be, so is this actual Survivor, or is it just sort of play Survivor in a hotel? No, actual Survivor. So they have tents and things? No. Oh, sleeping bags? No. Oh. Okay, I'll get back to you. And so that whittled down a lot. When we started to tell people, no, this is actually Survivor. You're celebrities, but you're doing Survivor. And there's a story I want to tell, and I don't know whether Guy or anyone else has talked about it. It was on day 3, the morning of day 3, second night, and it had been raining torrentially through the night. And this is early in the show, and they don't yet have, frankly, much kit. They hadn't won it. So they're still at the palm frond level of making a shelter out of palm fronds, no sleeping bags, frankly, huddling up together. Blokes in one, girls in the other, huddling up, spooning each other. And it was howling wind and pissing down with rain. And I know it because in my hotel room I could hear it. And at 2 a.m, my phone goes, and we have a safety officer, obviously near the set. And he calls me, and he's on a sat phone because there's no reception. And he's on says, David, mate, we got to pull him out. We've got to pull him out. So, why? Mate, they're fucking freezing. I said, okay, have you taken their core temperatures? No. Okay, take their core temperatures. But if it drops below 36.5 or 35 or whatever, 36, I can't remember what it was. If the core temperatures dropping below 36, okay, we've got a problem. If not, they're just cold and miserable. See you in the morning. Now, the following morning, we were filming a challenge out of this pig stuff. It wasn't pig stuff. Lots of pigs, lots of mud, and lots of shit. And we're just about to get the thing rolling, and Dicko's just about to do his piece. We've got all the cameras ready, and one of the contestants, I won't actually list names, but one of them came up and he said, David, want a word? Okay, can you wait? No, it needs to be said now. Right, okay. And he said, it was a he. He said, a few of us have been talking and we're not happy. We're not happy with the conditions. I said, pause it there. Just give me one moment, pause it there. Cameras 1, 2, 3, I want a close up, wide shot on the group. Yeah, you can do a reversal on me. Okay, rolling, we've got sound. Okay, that's all. So now, what were you saying? With the conditions, I said, look, okay, I know it's pretty miserable last night. And, I'm really glad you're still here. We've got a choice. Right now, the choice is in your hands. This can go one of two ways. We can do Survivor Light, and you get tents, and you'll get some food, and we'll pretend to do Survivor, and money will go to charity, and you'll all be comfy, and we'll all be okay. Or we can actually do Survivor. Which one do you want? Oh, well, Survivor. Good. Okay, let's. Are we ready now for the next challenge?
Oh,
And
David, you've got to tell us who
and
now.
It was just at that moment, you're on day 3, and you think, all these celebs and their managers, should they be able to get hold of them, which they can't, thank God, will be on me. They will rebel. I'll lose them. They'll strike. They'll sit down. They'll strike, and I'll lose the show. We got million. We'll talk about budget later, but exactly how much money I was riding on it, and it's gone. And I'll be phoning the network. Haven't got a show. And that was a pivotal moment. I either reined them in or I didn't. And yep, it worked.
I'm just picturing you now, David, because after you finally solved all that, you're like, all right, are we ready to film? And then Imogen would have come up to you at that challenge and said, oh, I'm an animal activist. I don't want to be involved with the pigs. And you would have been like, oh, shit.
Oh, shit. Okay, fair enough.
Sit down and shut up and listen.
Exactly. Yes.
David, come on now. Come on. It was a guy.
No pigs were eaten.
Was it Guy Leach? Was that Guy Leach that came up to you?
Look, I'd sooner not, but there were a couple of
It was Guy Leach. I'm taking that as a yes.
Alpha males who wanted to wield their weight.
I don't think it was David Oldfield.
Did you say that?
Okay, I'll say this, David. Is this one of the problems that you were worried about, like not doing a celebrity version rather than a normal season? Like, this is day 3 and you're already having these dramas. Is this something that you were well aware was going to happen throughout the 25 days?
Yep. Everything, every day, more so, I suspect, than a proper Survivor. I mean, I'm going to use that word, proper Survivor. We weren't doing proper Survivor. Anything else, every day was a negotiation.
Yep.
They wanted something out of us, mostly food, but they wanted something out of us, or they wanted to do this or that, or I don't want to do this. Everything was negotiation. And I had to lay down pretty early on that there's some things we can negotiate about because we need them to perform for us. There's a lot of performing. So we needed them to perform. So for that, we had to have a bit of give and take, but there's some things that, are just non-negotiable.
Well, I'm sure that's something that when you went into, you knew was going to happen. And you had to nip it in the bud early. Otherwise, like you said, everything was a negotiation. If you would have tried to give in to them too much at the start, I could imagine by the end of it, you would have been ready to walk away and say, you know what, forget about it.
I can imagine, by episode 4 or something, it'd be, okay, the challenge we've got for this, oh no, I don't want to do that. No. Or the immunity reward is, oh God, you can do better than that. So everything would have been they'd realized that there was weakness, if you like. They didn't realize how on edge I was, that the whole thing could fall over.
Well, and this is the interesting part. Going back to when you said you only had 6 weeks to prepare for this season. I mean, even just hearing you talk about all the stuff that you had to go through in the early part of the game, that's extraordinary, because 6 weeks to plan a 25-day season, you would have had to put a lot of things in place that, how each day was going to pan out. I would love to hear about that, just that 6-week period. And
it's fairly formatted. All you need 2 challenges, a challenge a day. That's it. And you need your tribal council thing. So it's pretty straightforward. And having done whatever 6-7 series of The Mole, plus the whole of Who Dares Wins, game playing, thinking up the games, thinking up the challenges, that's the easy bit. That was the fun bit. I loved doing that. So thinking them up, and also we had the whole Survivor library to play with. So a lot of that was thinking about what can we pull off that's going to have one big challenge per show that's going to look fantastic on a limited budget, and one lesser one that we can actually get built in time and will look Survivory on a budget. And that's where a lot of the trick came. And I'd love to And frankly, we just outsourced it. So a mate of mine, Daryl, in New Zealand, we just commissioned him. He flew up to Vanuatu. He brought his team. He hired, I think there were 250 locals working on the production, building stuff, and doing all the art direction and all the props and everything. So he was running all of that, and I just outsourced it. We came up with lots of ideas. They started then just making it, and then we were testing the games, the challenges while we were shooting. So we were testing episode 4 while we were shooting episode 1.
Yeah,
that's how tight it was. So we had different units setting stuff up, testing it in somewhere else while we can do another episode and slowly catching up.
Wow.
And it kind of worked.
That's crazy. I definitely want to talk about the challenges, because one thing that I think definitely holds up very well with the Celebrity Survivor season, I don't think there's a bad challenge in the entire season. I think the challenges are actually fantastic, and that wasn't quite the case on the Channel 9 version, which I still stand by. The worst challenge I've ever seen is on that season.
Well, thank you to say I hold up True Survivor on a pedestal, because their challenges, their art direction is extraordinary. My aim was to capture 80% of that on 10% of the budget.
Wow.
And I kind of think we're getting there. We didn't reach anywhere near the heights of art direction and challenge intricacy that they did. We hope we'd just get away with it. That's all I was aiming to do.
Well, I think you did. I think you succeeded, definitely. Because, again, we'll talk about sort of the perception of kind of the season a little bit after. Just, again, quickly on the casting, you mentioned about your dream cast and kind of things like that. I mean, was there anyone that sort of you got close? I mean, the famous one that sort of Amber talked a lot about was Anna Kournikova, was apparently very much touted. Yeah. I mean, was there anyone that you can sort of say that was maybe, very close to getting, or that you really were trying to get and maybe just couldn't get at the last minute? Do you remember sort of any other names that were kind of being thrown out there during that time?
Anna Kournikova was the only one that we were prepared to sink a truckload of money into.
Right.
But she came with a condition that she'd get the truckload of money and she'd be out after 3 acts.
Oh, wow. Wow.
And we couldn't, in all honesty, con the audience like that.
Mm-hmm.
It just wasn't right. And so, and pardon that, we would have needed her for the end anyway, but we couldn't get around that.
I guess it's a bit similar to what happens many years later in Celebrity Apprentice when they got David Hasselhoff over. He was only in it for a very short time and clearly had done a sweetener deal where they'd paid him a certain amount of money. He would only be in it for this long. In a show that's meant to be, you get voted out, whatever. But it was clearly a sweetener deal where you're only in it for a certain amount of time, which was clearly what Anna Kournikova wanted all those years earlier with her sweetener deal on Celebrity Survivor.
And, some shows you can do, but you don't fuck around with Survivor like that. No. Then quite apart from that, everyone else, all the other contestants then know that. And then their contribution is devalued. So it's unfair all around.
Which we talked a little bit last week about the cast overall and kind of, Australia has a very common, our mentality when we see these shows. What's the thing we always talk about? Oh, they're not celebrities. Who are they? I've never heard of them, things like that. And, we sort of mentioned a little bit last week about how I think what this season lacked was kind of that David Hasselhoff, that real name that drew you in. We joked before that Dicko was maybe the biggest name. Yeah, and I guess that was the Anna Kournikova factor, wasn't it? If you have Anna Kournikova attached to Celebrity Survivor, you're going to have a certain audience who are going to tune in and watch it based purely on the fact that you got Anna Kournikova on the show, right?
Yeah. But then I'm a Celebrity has made its format out of having the not quite celebs.
Mm-hmm.
The celebs who are pretty good, but just not quite. I mean, they're actually on a different level to where we had. They were on a higher level of celebrityness. But, they're I think now people have got used to the idea that, you're not going to get your absolute A graders because, frankly, why would they? but you will get people, just one or two levels down.
And I think also, too, that we talked about last week as well, is that, say I'm a Celebrity Apprentice, shows like that, given at that period of time, reality television had been around for a certain amount of time, that people were celebrities because they were on reality television. You know, Sarah Marie, who was Imogen's friend, she was on Celebrity Big Brother, kind of that. And we see that on Celebrity Apprentice, like Tim Dorner, people like that come back on based on them being famous. And you were kind of in that period where, yes, there were bona fide reality television stars in Australia at that point, but you didn't really have anyone like the token reality famous contestant, did you? Was that deliberate? Was that just how it played out? Kind of, did you not want to go down that path of this person's only famous?
Shoot me down in flames, but I'm still of the view that anyone who appears on reality TV, unless they're displaying a skill like singing, they're well-known people.
Yeah.
That's all they are. They're not. They don't. This is old school. They haven't earned their place.
Which is what we talked about that last week, because it's interesting kind of how, because even back then when kind of, you look at someone like Sarah Marie, for example, on Big Brother, I'm a Tasmanian, Reggie, obviously very, proud of Reggie. But I mean, like, they were on a different level to what a famous person from reality is now, weren't they? Whereas like Sarah Marie and Reggie legitimately were household names in Australia. Whereas nowadays, no one will remember who won Big Brother, on Channel 7 last year or things like that. You know what I mean? It's kind of, it was different, but at the same time, it's, because that's where that Australian mentality, when we go like, oh, they're not a celebrity, who are they? The next thing is when you turn around and say like, oh, they were on reality, they weren't really a celebrity.
I think the thing about any celebrity format is part of the entertainment is seeing someone you've known in one environment and taking them to another. So a singer, a sports star, an actor, take them to an island. If you have a reality contestant, well, we've seen them in one environment, Big Brother or whatever. Now we're going to take them to another environment, an island.
Yeah.
No. What I'd want to see is, I want to see them now singing. Okay. You're taking someone from one place to another. Let's see how they go. That's where the interest is. So I think just transposing between reality shows, I think is just a little bit feeble.
With the casting too, like you mentioned kind of about how, sports stars, soap stars and things like that. Does Channel 7 also then kind of like, hey, we kind of want someone from Home and Away, we kind of want someone like this. Do they kind of have a bit of an input to make sure that their network's been represented?
Oh, absolutely. The whole point of a celebrity show is to self-promote. Because not only do you then get them on the morning shows and or radio, so they're increasing their exposure, which helps the celebrity show, plus also their home base show as well. So absolutely, you want to pull, if you can, about a third of the cast from your own family.
So you guys didn't end up getting Anna Kournikova, so I'd love to get your opinion on who was the main star, because I'm looking at the list. You had Elton Flatley had retired from football only like a year, earlier. So he's a sports star, but I wouldn't say celebrity. You've got Nicole Dixon. Well, she was big in the late 80s, early 90s, but we all knew her as Bobby. But they even had to sort of in the promo.
We had to super it, yeah.
You had to mention.
You may not remember me from.
It was and it was like this is Bobby, Nicole Dixon, the actress. But. Who? Like, Wayne Gardner was big. Everyone knew Wayne Gardner's name, but once again, a sports star. Who was the main celebrity, do you think, in your opinion, on the cast?
Dicko.
Yeah. Well, that's exactly what we get.
That's it. It was not 6 weeks. Not the audience knows about this or cares, but in 6 weeks, I think we pulled together an okay cast.
Yeah.
Was it a cast that we can be really proud of? No. We just got away with it. I think in some respects, David Oldfield was probably the kind of person you think, well, that's an odd sort of person to be doing a show like that.
Great casting, though. Great
Fantastic casting. King David, player. We call him. He's
fabulous. Yeah. So I think he was, look, frankly, they're all filler material.
Which is interesting, David, though you say that, because we did talk about last week on the show that, because Matt sort of posed a question to both of us, like, who would we change, kind of who would we like to see? And I sort of answered, like, I wouldn't change this cast now in hindsight. Like, yeah, okay, you've got that opinion of who they are, but I think kind of what makes the season is obviously the players and ultimately how it all turns out. And while, okay, they're not A-listers, B-listers, C-listers, there might be D-listers, I don't know. Like, I think we still ended up with a great product, which I would say, like, even more so some of the champions versus contenders. We've had some real fizzes on the champions and contenders seasons based on so-called celebrities who kind of, even the bigger name celebrities who kind of don't live up to the level of celebrity they are.
Well, the thing in any casting, and I'm going to go back on what I said about celebrity casting, you need your bad guys, your bad people, the people who are going to stir the pot. You need your innocents, who are going to be played, frankly, but somehow may turn out good. You need 2 or 3 people of both sexes who look good in bikinis or swimmers. The eye candy. So, by the time you've got all those, it's just, that's who you got.
Was there anyone else that you can remember that was really close to getting on, or like, and also even too, like on that question, you mentioned before about how you have some people even coming to you and you kind of like, well, if they're wanting to come to me, was Warwick Capper one of those people?
No, he wasn't. Now, why didn't we?
He would have been gold.
He's always on every celebrity show calling up, I'm sure.
I'm not entirely sure that Warwick Capper would have quite understood what Survivor's about.
He still would have done it. He still would have done it.
He still would have done it, but I'm not sure he would have quite understood what it was about. And reminds me of a Time on the Mole. So just diverging quickly. Time on the Mole, Series 1, where one of the contestants finally got eliminated. She, so who do you think the mole is? And she said, me. I think I'm the mole. I think we're all moles. I think everyone's a mole. Oh, no. Oh, God, what are we going to do with this? I don't quite understand the show.
Wow.
And I think with everyone on a show like Survivor, because the audience knows the show, the cast really have to know what it's about.
Which,
they have to know the full history, but they have to know that you're going to have to play politics.
And David Oldfield, obviously, politics, that was his baby. So, again, I'm pressing this question, David, because there's no one else who'll be able to answer this. So there's no one else you can remember who was nearly on the cast or pulled out or you wanted or anything like that?
I can't. I was so intent on getting everything organised that the cast is going to be the cast, whoever we can get on that plane.
So with Anna Kournikova, you said 36 hours before the game was starting, she pulled out. Was that obviously then Amber was the backup for her? Because from talking to Amber, she was on at 1 second, then she wasn't, and then she gets a call up just before to say, "Hey, pack your bags, get out here, you're on." Yeah,
I think it was Amber who was the standby ticket, so to speak.
Not Ben. There you go, Matt.
Yeah, not Ben. Yeah. And even with the starting of the game, they only showed there was only 9 on the boat. There was only 9 on the boat. Justin Melvey and Gabrielle Richens. Now she's an interesting one. I actually think she was pretty big name at the time, especially for me. I'm into rugby league, so she was heavily on the footy show, the rugby league footy show at the time. She'd been dating Solomon Hamono. She's obviously from the UK. How did it go about getting Gabrielle Richens? Was she just another one just through the agent, or is that someone that you wanted on the show? Obviously, she does look good in a bikini.
I hadn't noticed that, actually. Look, her and Justin, we just wanted some eye candy who might get the hearts fluttering in the opposite camps. They performed exactly as expected, I think.
Which, I'm dying to know the budget. I'm going to ask that in just a second, David. But just quickly, Vanuatu location. So 2 things on this. You obviously would have seen on the Australian version on Channel 9 that they filmed in Australia, and a lot of fans were very unhappy about that. So was it a key point to film overseas, and was Vanuatu the only choice? Were there other options?
Pretty much the only choice. Okay, so we've got 6 weeks. If you can imagine the logistical limiting factors, we need direct flights. Okay, so we need direct flights, preferably within a couple of hours. So that gives us Fiji, Vanuatu, Newcastle, that kind of string up there. Preferably somewhere where Survivor's already been. Vanuatu was there 2 years before. Somewhere with a government that's going to just welcome a bunch of people coming in and playing a bit of cultural havoc, frankly. And those are the main things. I think the Vanuatu, the big thing for us was US Survive had just been there. We went to the identical location that they had. Their tribal council had obviously been gone, but we could see where it was, and we basically rebuilt it. Frankly, we had a lot of the decisions had been made for us, so we didn't have to recce too much. We knew what was there, and we knew the government there had been through it, so there's nothing new for them, and it was just frankly easier to step into those footprints. Finally, we added all our own stuff, but there was a system in place that we could step into.
With the budget, tell me, David, what was the budget for Celebrity Survivor?
From memory, about 300 NEP.
Wow.
Which is 2 piss all now.
Yeah.
Only then it was quite a lot, but it wasn't extreme.
So that's...
We were determined, as I said, to do 80% of Survivor on 1/10 of the budget.
Which, yeah, because the rumours have always fluctuated around cost per episode in the US, obviously being well over $1 million per episode. So, if my maths are correct, that's less than $5 million for the entire season then that you've got.
Oh, less than that.
That's crazy. Because I know, we know that Stephen Peters didn't give us an exact figure, but he said it was less than 10. But it's so fascinating to kind of think about a product that I would almost go out on a limb and say that you would assume that your budget would be bigger than Channel 9 season 1 because you've got your overseas. You're mentioning you've got to pay celebrities. Channel 9 didn't have to pay.
Overseas is cheap.
It's cheap.
Is cheap.
Right. Yeah. Okay. There you go, Channel 9. What are you doing there? Stephen Peters, no excuse for Whalers Way.
Frankly, if you're flying people Sydney to Adelaide, that's about the same as Sydney to Port Vila. About the same. It's not too far different. Your wage costs, frankly, for construction are less. We're paying, I think, twice the going rate, but it's still, frankly, half what we'd be paying anywhere else. Hotels, funny, you've got a hotel, but you've got a hotel anywhere. It's pretty straightforward.
So
the big expense, helicopter.
Wow.
So this is all pre-drones.
Yeah.
So we had to fly a helicopter up from Queenstown in New Zealand.
Wow.
And it island hopped.
Wow.
To get up there. Stayed there for 2 weeks, then island hopped on the way back.
That is a long way.
That's a long way. That's a long way.
While we're on the topic of money, obviously each of the 12 contestants would have negotiated different amounts of appearance fees and all that with their agents, and depending on, how high up they are, I guess, on the totem pole. But how did it work? This is something I want to clear up. So someone like Kim Johnson obviously gets her appearance fee. It's all too hard for her. She wants to go. But what was the incentive for players to actually try to get to the 25 days? Was it the longer you lasted, the more money you got? Because otherwise it doesn't make sense. Like if Kim Johnson wants to go after day 2 or 3 and she's still going to get the same amount of money as she would if she lasts 25 days, how did you counteract that?
From memory, it's a sign-on fee plus dailies.
Okay. Yep.
So, but no one is doing it for the daily pay.
So
they're doing it. They want to survive because they're playing the game. And they think this is 3 weeks or a little bit more of my life this. I want to play it. I want to show my kids or other people I can do this. And you know what? This is an experience I'm never, ever going to repeat.
And I guess for some of them too, the more episodes they're on, the more airtime they're getting. They hope that it will lead to other things.
There is that, but frankly, when you're on the island, you're not thinking like that. You're thinking, your whole head's in the game. You're not really thinking about exposure outside.
And we know, obviously, the winner, Guy Leach, he ended up winning $100,000 for his charity. But was there another prize for the actual winner themselves? Like,
no.
There was no extra money just for coming first?
No, it was all just daily fees. Okay. And talking of Guy winning, that's my big regret. Not that he won, or Justin came second, but the two people who had been voted out and then brought back in ended up winning, coming second. That was unfair.
Well,
and I didn't think for a moment that when we're thinking about sending people out, bringing them back in, it didn't occur to me for a moment that the jury would allow them to win, having had that advantage.
Your season, I don't know if you know this, David, holds a very unique distinction in the history of Global Survivor. I've been the only season to have every player voted out, ever.
Excellent.
That's a crazy stat.
Talk about fucking the format.
It really is a weird stat when you hear that. And it's interesting about
it's just not right. It's not right.
With the players, just with their appearance, were they all, the sign-on fee, was it different per celebrity? And who can you tell us who got the most and who got the least?
No, I can't even remember.
Right.
And I think, to be honest, we enter a territory where, you know what, that's personal to those people.
Mm-hmm.
So even if I could remember, I don't think I'd want to share it.
That's fair enough. Now, David, you mentioned the helicopter. Now, one thing I agree with you about how it was unfair, players coming back in, winning and all that, and we're going to talk a lot about that later on. But I've got to give credit where credit's due. That opening with Dicko on top of Mount Yasser with the helicopter views and that. Can I just say, to this day, it is still the best opening of any Australian Survivor in history. And I'm giving all the credit. I'm hoping that it was you that came up with that idea because it is fantastic.
Oh, we just copied. I think we copied the US one. We thought the only reason to come to Vanuatu, not the only reason, is the rope jumping, which I know about through Who Dares anyway, and volcanoes. So stuff it. We're going to do that. And I'm the type of bloke. Give me half a chance to go anywhere that's fun. We had to ferry people up to the top of the volcano with the chopper. It's a bloody big walk. So we're ferrying people up, the cast and Dicko and the crew. And sure enough, we got it when the volcano was active. And it was seriously active.
Oh, it's so good. Like, I'm honestly it's by far the best opening of any Australian Survivor. Now, were you? Were you in the chopper? Were you like on the volcano?
Oh yeah, I was on chopper and on the edge as well. We all were, and looking down and smelling it. Yeah. So you can feel the heat, you can smell it, and I'm keep on looking over at the chopper pilot who, he didn't wind down, so he dropped us. He wouldn't wind the chopper down while he was there, and because he needed a quick getaway. And I said, look, we can't do with audio, so you go away. We'll call you back when we need you, just so we could have clear audio. So he took off, and then the volcano started erupting more, and I thought, holy shit, what happens if it erupts too much that he can't even land? And I was like, just don't go too far away.
What about the government? Like, are they worried in that situation that, well, we're letting these people right on the rim of the volcano, they're filming?
No,
what happens if it does erupt?
It's more cultural. It's more cultural than government. It's what the volcano means spiritually to the people in Vanuatu, and we got the approval. It's all okay. I don't think we angered the gods. I think the gods seemed to be pretty angry before we arrived.
Which is fascinating too, because it's not just the volcano. I think the whole opening, on the boat, you've got the locals, and you've even got Dicko getting involved with the oars and kind of really getting involved. Yeah. I love it. And what's also really great about your season is it toes that line of sort of old school, new school US Survivor where, you know, the location is obviously key in that period of US Survivor, and you really incorporate the local feel and traditions and things like that. And I don't think any season of Australian Survivor has ever captured that as much as you did, because you mentioned obviously like the rope jumping challenge. It's funny, I remember that. I knew about that because of Who Dares Wins. I actually knew about that because of Who Dares Wins. I remember that episode. And then, you know, just all the other cultural aspects, when Gabrielle goes and has the feast with the locals and is hugging a child, and you just can't replicate that. And I mean, I'm sure as an EP
I'm dead chuffed that you recognise that. That's something that's always important to us, you know. Otherwise, it is frankly cultural imperialism. You know, we want to be filming in this place because of what it offers, not in spite of.
I'm
going to tell you something about the rope jumping. Not
go
about
for it. Yeah.
Not about this show, but about Who Dares.
Yep.
So yes, we did do it as a Who Dares Wins, the full rope jumping thing. And you know, in the Who Dares format, a contestant could always refuse, and then it would go to Tanya or Mike, and they could be given the opportunity, and if they refuse, the contestant gets the prize, all this sort of stuff. Anyway, there is only one challenge, one dare we ever did in 13 series of Who Dares Wins, where I said to the contestant, "You are not doing this," and that was the rope jump.
Wow.
That's the only dare in the entire history of Who Dares Wins where off camera I said to a contestant, "You're not doing it. You're going to get the prize, but you're not doing it." And he was bitterly disappointed. I think he would have done it. Yeah. He climbed up. But
people pay to want to do that vine jumping. Yeah,
yeah.
And Tanya and Mike didn't do it either, did they? Because Tanya and Mike, they refused as well, didn't they? Oh, I guess you wouldn't let them do it. If you're not letting your contestant do it, don't destroy the merchandise.
No way. No. And they did a lot of them. Absolutely, legit.
God, you're making me now want to do Australian Who Dares Wins archives. Like, that's a great show. I really
just do the Australian David Mason show.
Yeah, bloody hell, pop stars, Bardo. Let's talk about Bardo. Why not?
You know what the nickname for pop stars was?
I'd love to know.
Flop stars.
Hey, you gave us, hang on a minute. I'll take back Bardo. You gave us Scandalous. Simon Ditcham was a Tasmanian icon for 5 minutes in 2001.
Look, to be honest, I only did the Channel 7 one. Adrian, my former business partner, did the original one.
Right.
I only did one of them.
Well, thanks, Adrian, for Simon Ditcham. I mean, come on now, what a Tasmanian icon he is. I'd just like quickly, before we obviously get back into the game, one thing just with the Channel 9 version, do you kind of take note of the so-called failures? I mean, I know it's a different format, I realise that, but obviously it's still a version of Survivor that local fans of the show are happy in some aspect that there's a locally produced version. Do you take note? And did you also have anybody involved in the crew or anything that had worked on the Whalers Way one?
No, we didn't actually. At the time, I remember watching it with relief that they hadn't got it right. And that's as a professional relief, because that's the show I wanted to be doing. And I'm glad they didn't hit the ball out of the park with it. And because I've just done a couple of things of Treasure Island, which is, Survivor Light, or Survivor on, without the good bits, I knew where, as does Stephen, where it fell short, and it was just not having bikini weather. Simple as that. The moment you have bikinis and buff pecs, then you got everything else you need, and they were just screwed by that.
It was very fascinating learning over that whole season and just kind of how it all played out, and arguably one of the hardest seasons in the history of any Survivor, kind of how that all played out. They couldn't obviously fathom for that. You mentioned about how, you couldn't use things like the music and things like that. With the music
this is Charlie, by the way.
Hello, Charlie. Sorry, Charlie. How are you, Charlie?
This is Ben.
How are you?
You want to wave? You can wave. There you go.
How proud are you of Is his father?
Charlie is 5, nearly 6.
5, wow. Now, have you seen your dad's version of Survivor that you did? That he did?
Actually, he can't.
Oh, we can't hear. Okay.
Anyway.
He can answer that. We'll get him on next week.
Yeah.
That's fine. We'll fill in the gaps.
Anyway, sorry.
We like this kind of uniqueness with it. It kind of it fits well. Matt's going to have children walking in a year's or so time, actually, like that. The music aspect. Jay Stewart, the composer. Now, one thing, we grew to love Jack Robin's theme on Whalers Way. Again, another thing that a lot of Australian fans weren't too happy about, that they couldn't use original music. You said you couldn't use, obviously, Russ Landau's theme in your version. But, Jay Stewart's version does sound a lot more close to the Survivor theme, ultimately, as Jack Robin's did. Again, were you involved in that? Does Jay send you a bunch of samples, and kind of how does that all come about?
I've worked with Jay since early 90s on, frankly, all my shows. He's a genius, and all we do is show him some of the footage that had been shot for the title sequence and say, we're not allowed to use the Survivor music, but we want the audience to think as though it is Survivor music. So go away, come back with the Survivor theme that we can get away with, in effect. And so he picked up on all the local instruments, local sounds, whatever. How composers do that, I do not know. It's not a part of the brain that I've got, but he comes back with stuff and you think, holy shit, that sounds good. And then just to start getting to work on doing a title sequence, and you think, whoa. And nothing we do Jay does, he composes music to a finished episode. So he'll give us a library of music. We'll put in sample music where we need it. We then give the episode to him before the sound mix, and he starts from scratch and composes music for that episode, for those scenes, to that timing.
Wow.
And that depth of sound, we did that for Who Dares as well in the Monolith, but that depth of sound, and I'm a stickler for sound, even on Survivor, where it's pretty difficult to get good sound. But when you do, and when you create, and it was all in surround sound, that it gives you a cinematic feel for a show on a budget. It's much cheaper to do good sound than, frankly, good cinematography.
I'm glad you signed off on the final theme, because it is fantastic. Like it gives you goosebumps just listening to it. It sounds like Survivor. And even if, like, say, and I know this wouldn't happen, but just say if Channel 10 now still couldn't have got the rights to the American, the ancient voices, they could easily have used your one, and it would, and people, it had that Survivor feel to it, and especially for Vanuatu, I thought it was perfect. It kind of had that chanting involved, and it gave you goosebumps, and it built up to the sort of the ending of the theme. It was great.
The pain of it, though, is from memory that we have to change it every episode, because the timing of the title, the timing of the title sequence changes. For instance, when we start introducing other people into it.
Well, yes, because I know at the first episode obviously didn't have Ben Wynn in it, so you had to add him in. So
I don't think the initial one even had Gabrielle or Justin. Gabrielle or Justin either, from memory. So we ended up adding more and more people into the title sequence.
It really is crazy just how things like that happen, and I'm with Matt. Like, it does give you goosebumps, and that we all remember hearing Ancient Voices for the first time. I mean, it is to this day maybe my
phenomenal. It's just
we're talking about what money does.
That is orchestral. It is also months of composition and trying and changing. That is money. Jay takes this away. He and a couple of others, he'll bring in a bit of instrumentation from here and there, but mostly it's him, or it was at that stage now. And he'll do it in about 2 weeks. That's the difference in money, and that's the difference between what we aim for, 80% of what the US show is, but on a tenth of the budget. That's that extra 20% of quality makes a huge amount of difference, but they're so expensive to try and attain.
Yeah, which is interesting. This might be a question for Jay, when we get him on the show, but I noticed in the credits, when it lists the score, it does say Jay Stewart and Russ Landau. Were there samples of any Russ Landau music that he maybe did incorporate? Why did you have to credit Russ Landau?
I can't remember that. I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, because it's interesting. I've interviewed Russ on a show I did before, and I actually messaged him to kind of say like, "Oh, were you involved?" And he was like, "No, they might have licensed something he didn't know." But I'd love to find that out from Jay, kind of, because it's interesting to kind of see Russ's name in the credits. So I didn't know if there was maybe one.
Wasn't aware of.
Yeah. And it's also just, you talking about sort of the process of getting the tape to Jay and everything. I mean, just on the editing, because again, a similar thing that a lot of people will say about the Channel 9 version, the editing was a little bit off. It wasn't quite the same. Your version, very tight, very on point with the US version at that time. It feels a lot more Survivor-esque like the US version. How heavily involved were you in kind of making that episode feel that way?
Constantly. I think I was almost slavish to the US version. We all wanted the audience to feel, oh yeah, this is proper Survivor, even though it's not. We wanted the audience to feel this is legit. This is what Survivor should be in terms of theme music, everything, editing. And so we didn't want to muck around with any of it. So the actual editing style, no, we weren't actually copying cuts or anything, but certainly the rhythm, the way it plays out. The Americans did it so well from the get-go. Even the very first few series were just, as I said, phenomenal. That, why would you try and reinvent?
Yeah, which, I mean, it's interesting kind of, we obviously grew a new appreciation for the Channel 9 version. And by that point, too, when you were doing Survivor, it was in a different period of the US version as well, obviously. Channel 9 had only had 2 US seasons behind them, but still very old school, very documentary style, whereby, at your point, Cook Islands, Panama, the original Vanuatu, it had tightened up a little bit more, so you had a bit more to play with. One really quick question I'd love to ask you about with Dicko. One thing I noticed on a recent rewatch, in the commentary, it almost seemed as though like a lot of his commentary was dubbed on in post-production. Was any of that dubbed in later?
Oh, yeah. Look, so he'd be mic'd up and he'd be watching and commentating live. But yeah, we'd write stuff in edit. Say, look, we need this because, we're having to cut a chunk out of a challenge. And that's a tricky thing with these challenges. You don't want to edit them as live sport, a thing that takes 8 minutes. Well, you're going to sit for 3 minutes, but still somehow it has to make sense.
Yeah.
So that was always a tricky thing. So yes, often we'd need him to voice bits just to try and get us over some pretty hefty cuts or something.
I'd love to know, I mean, obviously you mentioned before about kind of the incident at that challenge. I still believe it's Guy, although David could be one of those two. Imogen no doubt would have had some questions about, the pigs. And again, you might not want to answer this one for me, David, but I mean, who were the most difficult contestants? Who were the ones who were constantly questioning and kind of constantly that? And on the flip side, who was the best? Who kind of just played it like Survivor and didn't really give you grief?
Well, I think you've just hit the nail on the head, frankly, with the people you've mentioned.
All right, there we go.
You can look at it and guess who are the people who just want things to go their way.
Yeah.
And the thing about Survivor is you're in a place where things are not going to go your way. That's why you're there. So, those people, David, Guy, who really need things to go their way. Yes, they're antagonistic, but you're making good TV. We want that antagonism. We don't want you just all to be puppies and best mates. And I was really fearful. We had to make sure that not everyone is going to get best mates. Mm-hmm. On the other hand, someone like Nicole, such a gorgeous mum, she just wants to please everyone in the crew, please everyone else. And I'm thinking, oh, you poor love, you're there. And I'd say, are you okay this morning? And she'd say, yeah, had a lovely night. sweats a bit, you know.
Which, I mean, Nicole, yeah, I mean, her and Imogen, I think I said it last week, maybe one of the, if not the strongest pairing ever in Australian Survivor in terms of alliance-wise. Great, Nicole, very underrated players, both of them. It's funny with Guy, the one moment I think that kind of shines that personality is in that final challenge when he his foot slips and kind of Dicko calls it out. And like, it's interesting that it's even kept in the edit where kind of he's like, no, that's bullshit. That's not fair. No, that's bullshit. Like, and he's just questioning. And Dicko just kind of holds station and just keeps with the game. It's such a great moment. I love seeing Guy like in that moment.
Throughout all of these things, like that type of challenge, I'm glued to a monitor. Sitting on a beach or somewhere, glued to a monitor, looking, and I'm telling cameras, I need a camera on the foot. Just don't let go of the foot, because I need to see, if he lifts it, it's gone, and I have to be able to back up Dicko. And Dicko would be looking at me, and if the foot lifted, I'd go, and he'd trust me that I've called it right. But God, I had to have, there's no action replay, but God, I had to be right on it.
You were right. I watched that the other day. You were right.
With strong personalities like that, you have to be right. And you have to be absolutely clear with the rules. These are the rules, simple for the audience to get, but also simple for the contestants. The decision is going to be clear.
Well, I'm glad you guys actually kept that in the edit, because we know now, and I've been on the show, like, people do argue about results of challenges and stuff like that, but you just don't see it. Where this was a classic case where Guy's saying, well, no, he's arguing with the host, saying, no, this is crap, this is bullshit. And Dicko and yourself were right. His foot did slip, but I'm actually glad that it was kept in the edit, because it kind of does show that, like these challenges, if people don't just always accept the final result.
Well, again, the thing we always say in reality TV, that you want to create situations that create the unpredictable. And it's moments like that, plenty more actually in The Mole, but there are moments like that where the unpredictable happens that becomes a good TV. And in that case, Guy arguing, well, that also has show content validity, because that's the type of person he is. We're seeing a bit of the real Guy that all the other contestants see and will be voting on as well. So it all plays into it. It's not, let's just be mean, we'll show this thing. No, this all plays into the type of person he is, the type of game he's playing. So things like that, I think, are vital. Anything that goes wrong in a show, nearly anything, besides freezing water and wind, nearly anything that goes wrong in a show is going to make good TV, unless it shows up the production as having fucked up. Then you're withdrawn, if you like, the third wall, the fourth wall. So anything that goes wrong, people stumbling around, people missing things, people screwing up, whatever, that's great TV all the time.
You mentioned the unpredictability of filming Survivor, and especially a celebrity Survivor. Kim Johnson, first episode, she ends up becoming the second person in history to vote herself out. Obviously, it happened in season 1 in Australia with Lucinda voted for herself. Which I didn't know, by the way. I thought Kim was the first. No,
ever.
So she's the second, and it happened to be the first episode on both seasons. What happened?
Typical Aussies. Two Aussie shows.
I'm glad Des didn't vote for himself on Channel 10, otherwise Australian Survivor fans would have been so fucking mad.
Thankfully, they've cleaned up that rule now that you cannot vote for yourself. So if you want to quit, you're a quitter. Go, you're out, and you'll be known as a quitter. What happened around that? Like, obviously, you allowed her to vote for herself, but what ended up happening with Kim?
Bottom line is she was going to walk. And I thought, how do we handle this? Because we'll run out of contestants before we get to our 13 eps if you walk. So I had to cajole her just to stay on and allow yourself to be voted out. I told her it'd be my preference if you don't vote for yourself, vote for someone else, but allow yourself to be voted out, and you will be. But she chose to be honest, frankly. And, you know, I applaud her for being honest. And because there are no Survivor rules, then frankly, she wasn't breaking a rule. You know, no one had ever said that. It's not in any rule book or anything. So she's entitled to write what she likes on that bit of paper.
And I'll give you credit, like with the editing, they did try to edit around it to not show that she had voted for herself, but of course it gets out that she had.
And Italian, yeah.
Yes, that's right. But you did do a good job of trying to avoid it, unlike with Lucinda, where she's like, yeah, I'm voting for myself in season 1, and they show it all that. So I'll give credit there. And it is interesting to hear that she was going to walk. What was it? Did she not realise that she was signing up for a real, like a semi-real?
Pretty much so. I mean, her view was, oh, well, we're going to a tropical island and we're going to be sleeping on the beach. That'll be lovely. Yeah. And she hadn't actually understood what that actually entails. And it wasn't for her. And we kind of knew it on the way in, frankly. We knew that, yeah, she's probably not going to hack it for long.
So does that, I guess, anger you a little bit? Like you're putting I could imagine you would have been putting in long hours to get the show up and running. These people are getting paid to be there. And then what, from almost day 2 or whatever, they're like, I'm going to walk. Like that, it must be frustrating.
No, far from it, because all we care about is making 13 episodes. Have we got enough content? Have we got some good stuff? Or are we going to be laughed out of town by the TV industry, by Survivor fans, by critics? That's your big fear. Number 1, don't get laughed out of town. Number 2, try and make something good. And so, no, I don't get upset by what human beings want to do. I mean, they're human beings. That's why we want you on TV. Just try not to fuck it up for everyone else.
The two big things I'd love to get answers from you today. One you might not be able to answer, I'm not too sure. The other I know you'll be able to answer. The Justin Melvey bribing situation, it kind of loosely gets explained but doesn't, and never really gets a full answer. Do you know what exactly Justin was offering and what happened around all that?
Oh, that's been wiped from my brain. No, I don't. I think, from memory, he may have been cutting an off-camera deal for votes, which I don't give a toss about, frankly. It doesn't really affect the show, except the fact that anything that's done that we can't tell the audience about is unfair on the audience.
Yeah.
So that's the only reason I'd care about something like that.
Well, it's interesting because the reason I bring that up is because, yeah, you're right. So essentially what, we see is all of a sudden the episode where Justin initially gets voted out, Imogen kind of, she gives up immunity so she can be like, hey, I'm not just saying this because I have immunity. I'm going to give this up essentially to prove that I'm doing this because of integrity. Great move by Imogen, I will say. And she basically says that, Justin, you have been, keeping people around to stay in the game to back you up by offering us bribes. Justin never really answers it. It gets brought up again in Final Tribal Council. And, you talk about the rules, and it's fascinating to hear this from you and Stephen, that you're not given any rules, so you've got free will. In the US version, it's clear as day. You cannot make deals. Like, you can't, share the money. Like, if I win, take me to the end and I'll share the $1 million. You're not allowed to do that. It's strictly forbidden. Same with voting for yourself. Strictly forbidden. So it's kind of fascinating. I really like hearing that from you, that, you don't give a fuck, basically. Because if there's not a rule, again, they can sort of do what they like. So, I mean, again, I'm really digging the memory with this. So, like, I'm assuming there was nothing filmed of Justin giving these bribes or things like that.
No. It comes back to, the fewer rules you have, the more people can play. If everything is tightly constrained, well, this is the game we're playing, and there's no unpredictability. Make it loose, do what you like, in order to win. That's legal. Frankly, not allowed to hurt people. And so I tend to fall into that camp, as long as it's something that we can explain to the audience. And the audience will decide, is that fair? And your teammates will decide, is that fair? So, but then that, we're just in the one series. If I can imagine the US one, well, if that starts getting out of hand, let's all split the money now between the 18 of us or however. I'll get to the end. I'll take half the amount just to be the winner. And then everyone else, or whatever. Then it's a fuck show. I can imagine that happening. In this show, no, it's not. It's just kind of do it your own way, but you're going to have to live with the decisions you're making. As you say, it was revealed, and it didn't do him any good.
The other question, which I'm sure you'll be able to answer, because I'm assuming you're the one who came up with it, the idea to bring back in players as an attempt to kind of come back in the game, was this always the plan? Was this decided halfway through? Kind of, how did that all come about?
Always the plan. And look, it's vulgar and honest, but it's budget. We didn't have enough money for enough contestants. And we frankly couldn't find enough good ones in the 6 weeks of pre-production we had. So we've got this number of contestants. We need this number of episodes. They were always thinking from the get-go, we've run out of people. So they knew something was going to have to happen. The audience would probably figure that as well. 13 episodes, or if they'd even be thinking 13 episodes. So it was always going to happen. And I consulted Castaway about it, saying, "Look, is this okay?" And they said, "Well, yeah, if you like, but they're going to be living it up in the hotel for a few days and feeding up and everything." And I said, "Yeah, but we've kind of got to." And sure enough, Castaway was right. By the time Justin and Guy came back, they were fed up. They were nicely fed. They were relaxed, rested, and blitzed it. But I was just so counting on them being voted out. I can't understand why they weren't.
Which, does it cross your mind, though? Because the US had done it in Pearl Islands at that point. They had the outcast twist, and it was strictly said that these guys were basically, as soon as they were voted out, they were told this is a potential twist, so they were lived on rations and things like that. Did that not cross your mind to maybe say, like, hey, guys, this is a plan, have some rations, rather than getting them to kind of bulk up and eat food and carbs and all that kind of stuff?
No, we weren't that clever.
And they
and to be honest, to be honest, it was a whole lot easier.
Yeah.
Go to the hotel and shut up.
And I guess it would have been hard to convince the celebrities to say, "Hey,
Impossible.
we're gonna do that twist." What Ben
By
just
the way,
said. But
you're not getting the air. You're not getting the airtime, and you're
Exactly.
going to be living in shit. And you might come back, but then you might
It
not.
might not exactly.
Which, I mean, David, you talk about, Survivor fan, kind of dream job, all that kind of stuff you're talking about. I mean, as a purist, someone who loves the game, this must piss you off, because, I mean, it's something that a lot of Survivor fans hate, this outcast twist at the top. It was the outcast twist in Pearl Islands, everyone hated. Australian Survivor fans, and I'm one of them, I hated the twist on your season whether you brought them back. So as a fan yourself, that must piss you off.
Completely. I thought I hated it. I hated having to do it. I hated fucking the format. I hated the unfairness of it. And the only thing that kept me going with that was the absolute knowledge that these lucky buggers coming back into the show would be shown short shrift and be booted off next episode. And they weren't.
Well, the problem is, I guess, is the fact that two of them came back, which allowed them, what ultimately happened, the two of them got to the final two. Where if you just had one of them come back,
I know.
It would still mean that one of them.
We should have done. I know. I wish.
Because we've always said
we didn't.
that the best two players, what Ben and I think is the best two players in your season, was David Oldfield and Imogen Bailey. So it's a shame that they didn't, at least one of them, get to the final two.
Completely. Yeah, they were the best talent. They were the most interesting. They gave so much. They tried hard. They had integrity. They were everything you want in a Survivor contestant. I'll take the rap for it. Fuck the format. to the extent that it didn't work to the show's advantage.
You have the unique distinction, though, David. You mentioned before about how at the time you thought Kim Johnson was the first person to vote herself out. Obviously, your season and season one had the distinction of that happening. You also had the distinction that both your winners were professional athletes. So you kept the trend up on Australian Survivor at that point of kind of, having that trend.
Yeah, I really never thought for a moment that athleticism would defeat.
Well, no one did. That was a try. I think when people first saw this format of Survivor, that was always the understanding. The athlete would always win. But of course, it was quickly shown that that was never the case. So Australian Survivor did have that unique sort of, distinction of having that rarity, which, obviously, and even Lee made it to the end in season 3, of course. Nearly, you had 3 professional athletes nearly win all 3, but yeah.
And the only reason it happened in our version, they were both voted out because they were threats, because of their athleticism. They could win challenges, win immunity. And so that's why they were voted out. So my hunch would have normally been right. Politics would win over athleticism, except the fact that bloody brought them back.
2 quick questions on it, though. Did any of did Imogen, David, or Nicole kick up a stink behind the scenes when they found out this was happening?
They may have done privately. They didn't to me.
Because I know David on camera, you hear him, like as you said, many of them have worked it out. David was the one you saw the confessional from. The other question I'd love to know, this is going to be a question we're going to pose to all the contestants we get on this season. In your eyes, if it's a Imogen David final 2, who do you think would have won?
Imogen.
She was good.
I think her integrity shone through. She was masterful in memory. I'd have to go back to it. I think she gave her immunity to Nicole.
Yeah, that was the one I was talking about where she was,
That was a master stroke.
Yep.
I mean, if it was Nicole and Imogen in the final one, I don't know. But Imogen had just pinned her colours to the board saying, I have integrity, I play the game, I value people, I value my tribe. Well,
what I liked about Imogen too, she could have easily been the first boot because obviously Kim Johnson wanted to go, but Imogen didn't do well at the start in that first challenge, the start of the game, and she could have easily gone. I dare say if Kim would have been disabled as a different contestant, someone that wanted to stay, Imogen probably would have gone first. So she then ends up throughout that 25 days or however long she was on there for, really starts to become this good, genuine Survivor player. And you almost look at her in the end that she's not actually playing a celebrity version. She was actually playing a genuine
real Survivor.
And and so was David. So, look, it is something we can never change. Like, I give you a lot of raps on so many things you did right on the show. And I know you said you just didn't think it would happen, but it is such a shame.
I will take it. That fucking the format wrecked the show. Didn't wreck all of it, but it kind of did, and I regret that. It made a travesty of what the show really is, and I really do regret that, and I regret the impact that had, particularly on Imogen and Nicole, who should have won, frankly, and I'm sorry they didn't. Actually, really sorry.
The thing that I will say, David, and this goes back into what I'm renowned for and sucking up to, I guess, but, I mentioned about challenges, great thing, but, in just rewatching it recently, it really does, I feel, bridge that gap between old and new school Survivor, because the thing that it really has going for it with the gameplay, you have alliance shifts, you have blind sides, you have redemption arcs, you have these players that, as Matt said, could be first but go on to, nearly win the game. A lot of what modern Survivor fans love about the game now. All the talk today is about gameplay and blindside. That's what people think Survivor's about. You've got a half and half. You've got the old school and the new school. And that's what's great. I mean, one of the best sort of reaction episodes when Wayne gets voted out and you cut to Guy and he's got that gasp look on his face, like a GIF in today's world. Things like that. And like it's funny you keep mentioning about how this isn't real Survivor. And I want to talk to you more about that after, but for as much as most people might think this wasn't a real Survivor season, you have so many layers of this that makes it a bloody good Survivor season.
It's a bloody good imitation of Survivor. That's how I'd put it. The reason I say it's not real is that in real Survivor, they are truly aiming for, in the US, the $1 million. You know, I will do what it takes to get that. And that brings out real fierce competitiveness in politics. So we didn't have that level of competitiveness that the US series does. Secondly, we shoot it in 25 days, I think it was. So it's short and sharp. You're not really doing the full 36 days of being deprived of stuff. You get the changes. We've started to see some changes, but not the full changes you really get. And kind of because they're celebs, they know the business, they know TV, they know it's a game. They're kind of flopping in and out between playing the game and doing the TV. And so that's why I say it's kind of an imitation of Survivor.
Look, the one thing I will say, like, I can't disagree with the 25 days shortened format. I don't think there's a way like that. That is a clear argument, I think, against this. But the one thing I will, it's interesting to say disagree with the executive producer. You're the guy who fucking put this together, and I'm disagreeing with you. But I think that with the aspect you're talking about, the $1 million, to me, most Survivor now is, $1 million is great. $500,000 in Australian version is great. But to me, and this is a personal thing, I'm sure Matt is the same, we've talked about this before. If I was to go on Survivor, to me, it's about winning the game. The money's secondary. The title of Survivor is what I want. And I think someone like David, Imogen, they had that in their eyes. And I also think what's benefited your season 15 years later is back to what we were talking about, champions versus contenders. I think now that we have essentially halved celebrity seasons on Channel 10, which hardcore Australian Survivor fans are adamant, this is real Survivor fun, this is great. It validates your season because, you know, they've got as many celebrities on their season. They have 24 cast members, of course, so half the cast, 12, are celebrities, the same amount in your season. Channel 10, in some weird way, have validated your season as real Survivor in my eyes.
No, well, I wish I'd had the chance to produce it properly, proper Survivor.
You did a very good job, David, for what you had. We're giving you that props right now that you really did.
One other thing I should just say, you mentioned, we talked earlier about helicopters and the constraint. Now, of course, you can do so much with drones. Then, obviously, we only had helicopters for aerials. And so I don't know if you're aware about how challenges are shot. So you shoot the challenge, the contestants go off, a unit and a director goes up in the chopper, and we have a cast of stand-ins wearing all the same stuff,
the dream team,
looking roughly like, and then they recreate it.
Yep.
So we get all those shots, and we don't have cameras in place. We try and get the rough positions of where each tribe was, and try and reproduce it, shooting it all from aerials and stuff. Dicko on the beach or whatever, no other cameras around, looks fantastic, it's all make-believe. I'd be intrigued to know how they shoot it now, whether you can still do that with drones or whether they have to still reproduce it to get rid of all the cameras to redo it. I don't know.
I'd ask Matt, but he was only on the show for 2 days, so he bloody doesn't know.
No, I know in the challenges I was involved in, there was, I don't know whether once we left, what happens, because obviously we're blindfolded and you get in, car and you go back to your beach. But obviously they're very particular of where they have the cameramen, obviously, and all that. But and like you said, they do a lot of drone stuff now. So you don't use the helicopter.
By the time you've got a camera crane on the beach, blah blah blah, you can't take a wide shot.
Yeah, I know they still have a dream team where and I guess when they do the mock tribal councils and stuff, so the host can run through what questions they think they're going to be.
Oh, we never did mock tribal councils. We just went for it.
Well, Dicko's a professional. So, talking about filming, though, David, what about limitations on what you could show of these celebrities? Because we know that Fiona Horn had some full-on naked shots, which she clearly seemed not to worry about, which we hadn't really seen in Survivor at that stage, and we don't see now. But was there limitations on what you could show of certain contestants on the show?
No, I've got Survivor uncut on my computer, and I can go back and no limitations. I mean, people know that they're going to be in bikinis, they're going to be in swimmers or whatever. It just comes down to decency. No, we're not going to shoot you having a piss or a shit somewhere. That wouldn't make pretty good TV, frankly. If you happen to get your rocks off with anyone else, sure as hell we're going to shoot it. But
I was just going to say, because with Fiona Horn, obviously you do see where she's bathing and she's got her breasts out and stuff, which we hadn't really seen much of. There was a little bit in season 1. We just don't see it now. But I just wondered with these celebrities, there might have been some that were more than happy to take their tops off and get shown.
I think we would probably had a contractual obligation to show her breasts.
Yeah. Well, she didn't seem to mind. So
no, she was absolutely, and that was part of her persona. So yeah, they were doing what they wanted to do, in full knowledge that in front of the cameras.
And I would assume that in the airing of that's then up to 7, whether they want to pixelate that or show it, right? Depending on the time slot.
Yeah.
Because it is interesting. It's sort of, we saw a few bums in season 1. Obviously, Australia's not as prudish as the US, so we do get to see a little bit. Yeah. But then, I guess also it comes down to how the contestants feel, because we see in the reward challenge when Imogen, Gabrielle, and David go off and they're having showers, Imogen and Gabrielle are still in bikinis while they're washing. So it's kind of it would come down to the contestants, I guess, as well.
Absolutely. So there's frankly being on a beach, you'd know this, Matt. Being on a beach for a period of time is so unsexy.
Oh, yeah.
It's just your bits are all over the place. You're feeling crap. You're sunburned or you've got mozzie bites and you're not feeling sexy. And most of the time, we try hard to make people look sexy. Okay, so here's the thing. Tribal Council. We want everyone to look glam. Frankly, you're on a beach. You're salty. You're sandy. You haven't got any clothes. We want you to look glam. So we broke the rules, if there were any rules. Said, you know what? Give yourselves a shower, and there's a bit of makeup there as well.
Wow.
Make yourselves look nice for TV. This is a TV set piece. Then you're going back to the beach. So yeah, we broke. If that was the rule, we broke it.
So they had showers.
Would that happen at before every Tribal Council, that they would get to have a shower and put on some makeup?
There were a couple of times just when they looked so ratty that you think, oh, this is not attractive.
And did any in particular kind of flaunt that every time? I always look ratty. Make me have a shower.
No. It was purely, it was a kind of one of those privileged things of, guys, you've had a shit of a day. I know I say a shower, basically a hose pipe off a tree somewhere. Oh, luxury, fresh water. And it was just a sort of bit of basicness. Water, we talk about water. There was each camp had a big barrel of water buried in the sand with a lid on it, of 400 litres of fresh water topped up every day. They could have as much water as they want. They had bowls. They could give themselves showers, frankly, cold water showers, just like that. There's nothing new about it. It's just, we don't want people getting infections and just getting rashes or coral cuts or whatever.
One thing that I learned from Stephen, which fascinated the hell out of me, was that he did admit that there was, a time or two where to get them in a bikini, he may have given them a chocolate or two, like, hey, get in a bikini. Did you ever have to kind of do that with any of the contestants?
Never need to do that, no. We did have a time, which I discovered that, so we're filming in Vanuatu, where we're not on a private territory. There's a village probably 800 meters away. And we asked the locals were employed on the production. We asked them just not to swing past or whatever, just to stay clear. But obviously, some of the contestants had got to know some of the locals because they'd seen them around, and the locals, some of them, felt really sorry for the contestants who were really hungry. And so they would come, we found out about this, they'd come and leave packets of biscuits in the bush.
Wow.
I said, oh God, look, clever, and or behind the dunny, because they'd clean up the dunny or whatever, and they'd leave packets of biscuits. And I found out about this, and I said, oh God, I'm going to have to stop this.
I can just picture him leaving a packet of
schoolmaster or something. Yeah.
I can just picture it leaving a packet of ice Vovo for the guy leaves.
I know. And I just said, I pulled the contestants together. I said, look, guys, I know you need and I know you want it, but it's kind of not a good look. Asking the locals for food, breaking the rules, it's just,
just don't do it.
Right.
I can just
so
picture
we slowly clamped it down without a song and dance.
I can just picture a guy leaves at tribal council. He's like, oh, I've got a bit of coconut caught in my teeth.
Yeah, exactly.
Just from
Or in the background of a shot, there's a nice Vovo wrapper.
Yeah.
So you missed the boat like Channel 9 did. Everything bloody sponsored. This brought to you by Intel, this brought to you by... You could have been like, bloody, this episode brought to you by Arnott's, Ice Vovos and Tin Tams.
Well, that's like...
We didn't.
So I was just going to say, I'm glad Ben brought that up about the promotion. One thing we talked heavily about season 1 was the sponsorship. They had their hand in all the pie. There was Lay's, bloody Solo, Reebok, everything. I know that there was some ads running at the time. I think Nicole and Amber were in like an Olay Total Effects ad and stuff, but whether that was just something that they had done outside of the game. But was there any sponsorship for your season?
So no sponsorship in show during the season. We didn't have time to set it all up for a start. And secondly, I think, frankly, that's a bit too blunt. I just work hard to try and think how we include it without it looking so crap. But that aside, happily we didn't have to. Any advertising afterwards was all done with a network, with network's permission. They get paid, but only, and frankly, the network's saying and offering opportunities to people saying, do you want to be involved in this ad or whatever? So all done absolutely above board with the network.
You mentioned sort of about the network, everything along those lines. You listened to Stephen Peters' interview. He, talked about kind of moments where they're sort of brought in and gone like, hey, guys, this isn't going as well as we thought it would. And obviously, ultimately, no discussion was ever made for a season 2 of the Channel 9 version. Do you have those constant communications with Seven about like, hey, these are the ratings, this, that, and everything else? Was there ever a prospect of another season?
No, we could see the numbers, see the reaction and realise, we haven't hit this out of the park. And at 300 grand a net, you need to hit it out of the park, even at that budget. We knew it was a fair crack of the whip. It didn't harm Seven, which it could have done. If it had been complete crap, if it had been laughable, it would have been pulled. Happily, it wasn't laughable. It stayed on air. Seven got its money back in effect.
Which is interesting. I mean, Seven, I think, and Nine, really, let's be honest, are kind of renowned out of the 3 networks for kind of being a little bit more, oh, shit, this is not doing well, let's pull it more so than, say, 10. 10 gives it a bit more of a chance. But it's fascinating about that because, we talked about last week how this came about sort of in a period where celebrity reality shows were really the thing. I mean, Dancing with the Stars was a huge hit around then. It Takes Two, kind of all that sort of stuff. Because, it could have gone maybe Dancing with the Stars-esque and all of a sudden you have a bona fide hit on your hands. Did you, when you're filming it, when you're creating it, can you think that? Can you think like this could be a hit and we could be doing this every year?
No, I didn't. I went into it thinking, I think we can get away with this once. I'm not sure that the audience will come with us every single year with it.
What was the ratings like?
I can't remember. I tried to look them up. So back then, we're talking millions of people. And then I think it was on a Wednesday or Thursday night. And I think it might have been getting 1.2s, 1.3 million or so, which is okay.
Today, that's
at
amazing.
That time in 2006, 1.4, 1.5 was good.
Yeah.
1.2's, it's okay. Now, of course, 800,000. Whoopie-doo.
Yeah.
But no,
I'd
then
kill for that.
1.1, 1.2 wasn't quite good enough. So.
Well, I think today, and I know it's a lot different because we've got so many live streaming services now, but I think current day Survivor get anywhere from the high 600s to mid 700s, depending on where it is in the season. So, and I know that's hard to compare now because television is different, but it is interesting. Like 1.2 million, that still seems like a lot of viewers.
But then TV was all we had. There was no Netflix. There wasn't streaming. That was it. And if it dropped below 1 million, then you're in the death zone.
Were you talk about sort of the version, everything you came up with, though, David, but as an EP, as a Survivor fan, were you at least proud of the end product of what you put together?
Proud of the way it looked and felt. I wasn't proud of the manipulations to the format we had to do.
Well, I hate bringing up any negative stuff because especially like I like your season and especially hearing about everything now, the budget and all that, it makes me even like it even more because I think for what you had in the time frame, it's actually quite amazing. One thing that Survivor fans love are the Survivor buffs. We had the 3 tribes. We had Moso, Kukula, and Tanner. And you have the different color buffs and all that. Your season was different. They kind of had bandanas and there wasn't really any design put into them. It was just a color and a logo and that was it. I have to admit, they were the most blandest bandanas we've ever seen on Survivor. What was
Time.
Yeah.
We just didn't. We couldn't even think of a name of the tribe until we got there. What do we call it? What absolute time. We just didn't pull it together. The fact that we actually had bandanas was an amazing thing. There are lots of things fell through the cracks like that.
Well, at least you had a bandana for Tanner because in season 1 they didn't even have a merged buff. They just had the Kadena and the Tapara buff, and that was it. So you at least got that.
We at least
right.
got there, yeah, exactly. 4 years separation, at least we can nail that.
One thing, David, just really quickly, super quick question just to backtrack before we get into the concluding questions. The one thing that actually I'd really love to find out, you talk about kind of coming up with a format, things like that. You touched on, putting Ben into a tribe. Was it always a plan to kind of have the tribes divided by gender and then kind of throw a spanner in the mix by having one male on the women and one female, or was that kind of a last-minute decision?
No, at the back of my mind, again, thinking, the mole manipulator that I am, okay, what situations can we create that may add a bit of drama, that will create things unpredictable? And it's not brain surgery, but boys versus girls, and then injecting one of each into each camp. Okay, now we're going to get a bit of sizzle. So that was always there. Things to create a bit of sizzle. Putting Gabrielle into the boys' camp and just seeing the eyes, just stuff like that. How's she going to cope? Is she going to get voted out? Stuff like that. So it's just playfulness of trying to create situations that'll give us enough material to fill 44 minutes. That's really what we're after.
Were you surprised 10 years later that Channel 10 all of a sudden decided to have another crack at this? Because ultimately at that point, Channel 7, I guess, had come and failed. Channel 9 had come and failed. Here comes a third network. And also just on that, I guess a two-part question, were you ever maybe contacted to be involved? And also, were you privy to how the contracts sort of worked and how Channel 10 were to get it?
Number one, I'm not surprised because it's one of the world's greatest formats, full stop. Every network needs some tentpoles in the schedule, and a big format show is the tentpole. So absolutely, lay down the there that Survivor should come back, and Big Brother. No, I wasn't asked. Plenty of producers around who, frankly, do the show really well. I think I might have been at 7. No, I was at Channel 9 at the time. I was head of development at Channel 9. So it would have been odd to ask me. I was surprised by the comeback of The Mole, though. That
Yes.
was a surprise on Channel 10. And I was greatly relieved that they fucked it up big time.
Very big time. What even was that?
Because The Mole is so precious to me. It's my baby. And I've missed that I wasn't producing it, and so relieved that it didn't deliver for the Mole audience.
Which, it's the fascinating world of television. You know, Matt and I can sit here in our chairs and commentate and talk about it. Matt's obviously had the distinct pleasure of being a contestant on a show, but, you know, Australian Survivor holds a distinction now alongside Big Brother, of course, of being on all three of the major networks in Australia. Off the top of my head, I don't know if that's ever happened with any other show outside of Big Brother and Survivor. So we do live in a landscape where we can kind of sit here and kind of comment on each of them. You can do that as a producer as well. So, I mean, what's your overall feel on the Australian version?
It's been on the ABC 7 and 10.
Oh, okay.
There you go.
There you go. Just not 9 yet. 9 hasn't done it. What's your take on the Channel 10 version, though, having produced a season yourself on a different network?
Really, seriously, I've never seen it.
Wow. Okay.
I tend not to watch too much TV anymore. I saw a bit of it. Had a chat to Stephen Tate when they were making it and wishing him good luck. And I saw the title sequence and stuff, and I thought, I can't bother to get into this. So no, I haven't seen it. I'm sorry.
You actually, can I just quickly say, Matt, really quickly before you say it, you've actually sat here longer and spoken and talked and seen Matt longer than he was ever on Survivor. So, you know.
He likes reminding me that I was a first boot.
Matt, you've got the easiest comeback. You just simply say to me, Ben, you never played. Shut up.
Well, I could be mean like that, but I'm not that type of guy. But David, I know that your season didn't end how you wanted to. You know, I'm sure that if you had more time, there would have been some things you would have done differently, or different people you would have wanted to be on the show. But are you still glad that your name is associated with Survivor?
Oh yeah. I love telling people that I'm in TV. So what do you do for it? I make TV. So what sort? Oh, stuff like Survivor.
Yeah.
You know, one episode of one series of Celebrity Survivor, but internationally, it's a bloody good name to have on your TV. And I'm proud of it. I'm proud of what I did, but frankly, really proud of what our team, an Aussie team, pulled off. Aussie and Kiwi team, frankly, the two came together. The Aussie and Kiwi team pulled off with bugger all time, bugger all money. And it looked the business. You know, I loved stuff like that. In a separate thing to TV, I also exec produced, created the pitch that Sydney did to get the Olympic Games.
Oh, wow.
Back in '93.
You just perked my excitement up there, David. I've got a different podcast about the Olympics. We might have to get you on that one to talk about it.
The same type of thing. Bunch of blokes and girls doing the impossible on a world stage and beating Beijing. Frankly, it's kind of cool to do stuff like that.
Okay, so I'm going to tell you something, David. You wouldn't know this. Now, Ben, back many years ago, actually was the face of putting a bid forward. He's getting a bit shy here, but this is true story. He was the face of putting a bid forward for Tasmania to host
Hobart.
Hobart.
Launceston doesn't get anything.
Tasmania, but Hobart to be to host the 2020 Olympics. What year was that, Ben?
Did I create it, or were we meant to host? We're meant to be hosting it right now. It was meant to be 2020.
You created it. It got all media attention.
We started at 2006. It was going to be a 2016. Went to 2020. Yeah,
but there were shirts made up. You've got something in common there.
We're going to have a separate conversation about that.
Well, in all seriousness, David, like you did, because Off the Podium, download now via iTunes. We do I do an Olympics podcast. I'm a mad Olympics fan, but I wasn't aware of that about you. So we might have to chat to you more about that. You know.
Tell you what, hang on, let's just. Oof.
He's going to show some memorabilia.
Here we go.
There you go.
Wow.
You can read that.
That's crazy.
So mentioned in Parliament by Paul Keating at the time, after we got the game, saying, thanks, Musco, to people like David Mason and his team for getting the games.
I hope you got some good seats.
We ended up swinging 2 votes on the final day.
Great.
1 by 1.
So
Anyway,
you must have gotten some good seats at the opening ceremony. We can talk about that another podcast, definitely.
I have a feeling, Ben, can I say, I have a feeling you're going to need to get David on off the podium at some stage to talk about this.
We're going to have him booked for the next 10 weeks. We've got, the Mole, Who Dares Wins, the Olympics.
2000.
Anything? Have you got anything to do with Formula One, David, right now? I might have you...
Not yet.
Not yet? All right. Well, you've got plans, plenty to come there. One of the biggest questions I kept asking during season 1, I want to talk about the legacy, and the difference I think between your season and the Channel 9 one, of course, is that obviously the Channel 9 version was original contestants. A lot of people, Australian Survivor fans, like to forget about the Channel 9 one and the Channel 7 one because they don't believe they were true to the game and that Channel 10 have done it correctly. We obviously adamantly disagree with that. That's why we call Channel 9's version season 1. We call your season 2. First season.
I'm astonished that you do call it that, but...
Yeah. So, well, I mean, that's the thing, because Channel 10 obviously do not acknowledge that anything existed before their versions. Is there part of you, even though you kind of say that it was kind of an imitation of Survivor, do you believe that yours should be season 2 and that Channel 10 starts at season 3, or it doesn't bother you?
No. Australian Celebrity Survivor is different to Australian Survivor. Full stop. We did it on a budget, short amount of time. It's a bloody good imitation, and I'm really happy with it being a good imitation. I think the format and the show is so good of Survivor, and we copied it. Legally copied it, obviously with Castaway. It's a copy. It's not the real thing. It's so many of the things that we did are absolutely legitimate, absolutely true. It's not Survivor light. It's not. We're never dishonest with the audience, but it's kind of not the real thing for me. I mean,
it's interesting. Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to sit here and debate. I disagree, but I mean, that's a different thing. The one thing I would like to say about that, though, is that, they did an All-Stars version on Channel 10 recently, of course, and, we've often talked about, we're disappointed that, of course, they didn't, attempt to get any Channel 9 versions or that nobody from Channel 7. Guy Leach admitted in his interview with David Jeanette that he was contacted by Channel 10 to potentially appear. So in some ways, Channel 10 kind of, in a weird way, do acknowledge that existed. Just, I know you haven't watched the Channel 10 version. You obviously didn't see All Stars, but would have you would like to see like a Guy Leach, an Imogen, someone kind of represent your season on an All Stars season?
Doesn't bother me. The Celebrity Survivor we did was a TV show we did 15 years ago, so I'm not for TV. It's not a show I own, like Who Dares Wins. It's not a show that's my baby, like The Mole, where I created, like Medical Emergency or Good Weekend and Who Dares and stuff, and all these other things which I feel really precious about because they're in my heart. Survivor is a format I produced. We did it quite well. On to the next show. Even though I adore the Survivor format and what Charlie Parsons has created, all that time ago, just masterful.
Did you get any feedback from Charlie after the show?
No. I think they were relieved that it did okay, disappointed it wasn't being renewed, didn't hear anything back from him or Julia Dick or anyone. Glad it's all kind of worked.
Your season never had a reunion, which fair enough. I mean, you're not going to get all these celebrities back for a reunion. So tell us, after the cameras got turned off, after Guy Leach wins, was there a big after party? Any funny stories?
The fireworks.
Yes.
And there was an after party. And I was just looking through some photos, which I can pull them up. With some photos of the after party, and a lot of us were in. I'm going to have to try and find them. Where are they?
Well, this is the thing, David. Like with season 1, there was a handbook. It had locations of where all the, the crew members were positioned, like with like the tents, the mess tents, and all that stuff. There's so much we don't know about your season, and like you said, you're talking about like some photos from after parties or even behind the scenes production photos, all that stuff. Like no one knows about it. It's never been seen before, and this is something I guess by us doing this podcast, we want to find out. Like, wow.
So lots of different things there. I mean, unfortunately, my computer seems to have frozen. Damn it! I can't even bring it up.
We might have to get you to send these to us, David, so we can potentially share them if we're allowed to.
I love that photo of Dicko you've got there with him on top of the volcano.
He's on top of the volcano, yeah.
No, absolutely. One thing we did... We definitely, during season 1, David, we had a few sent to us and we shared on our social media pages. And for people obviously watching the video of this, they can see that. But by all means, if you're happy to share it, we'd love to be able to share that with our listeners.
Yeah. I'll see if I can reload photos
and I think it's important. Like that's what we're trying to do on this podcast. Is we're bringing your season back into light, and we live in a different world now. We're such a social media world, and it's so easy to see photos, but it quite wasn't even back in 2006. It just wasn't quite like that. So that's what we're hoping to do today, and by interviewing you and the rest of the cast members would be to find out just really what happened out there in those 25 days. And I guess seeing those photos would be is one of those things.
Well, to be honest, I'm not absolutely sure I can share those photos. I don't have people's permission. I can share photos of me, but who gives a stuff about that? No, there are photos taken in private without any view to sharing them, and I think there's a kind of social contract there about sharing.
What about photos. Just the photo? What about the actual photos during the game, like the actual ones that would have been taken at challenges and things
maybe sort of wide shot type of stuff, maybe. Yeah,
publicity stills and things like that.
Publicity stills, they're obviously taken for a purpose, but these are, as it were, holiday snaps. Oh God,
I know. It's actually interesting you talk about Matt, and yeah, exactly. Obviously, we know a lot of these haven't been shared. I know that I think Imogen Bailey shared a few. She must have had some private ones that she had shared on her social media recently. I think maybe in the lead up to All Stars or something like that. Because it's interesting, sort of with some of the contestants from your season. I mean, obviously we got Amber on. Basically, how Amber came about. She had actually at the time had written a column. I still believe she's a regular columnist for one of the Sydney papers, and she had written kind of a column about her experience on Survivor. Guy Leach being on David's podcast, he constantly kind of, is now a little bit more active talking about Survivor. Imogen did on hers as well. So it's kind of some of these players still kind of talk about Dave. We've had numerous conversations with David Oldfield, who very much highly holds his experience up high. So it's, you've got at least a quarter of the cast who 15 years later still hold the experience quite high.
Good on them. Yeah, well.
And have you kept in touch with any of the contestants or of the crew over the years?
No. Oh, the crew, yes, because I've worked with them a lot. But the contestants, no, some of the crew, just some of the producers and people, turn into really good buddies. That's the thing about a show like that. You're somewhere nice, doing crazy stuff. You're bonded together. It just lasts.
Obviously, been up to a lot of things since David. But what are you up to now? Kind of what's the life of David Mason like? 15 years after Celebrity Survivor.
Oh yeah, having a damn good time being a dad. Mostly, that's what it's about.
Great.
And starting out some new business ventures and stuff. But loving living in New Zealand. Loving, frankly, having the time to do things for myself and my family. That's really what it's about.
Fantastic.
New Zealand and COVID is the best place
in
the world to be.
Yeah. I buggered off just as his shit was hitting the fan. So nearly didn't get to this side of the world. On
which note, I should probably give my family a bit of time.
Yes, you really should. You really should.
Is there anything you would like to wrap up or anything? Or
well, I guess I mean, we were about to say thank you, but I mean, if you've got a drop-dead secret you want to share with us before we let you go, I mean, if there's anything Dicko did outside of the fireworks before, that you want to share, I'm open ears.
No, I'm going to tell you a story, but without names.
Okay.
So the whole shoot has ended. All the contestants are back in. This particular time was after a contestant came off the show. So once they were no longer in the show, they're back in the hotel, and they hang out, I think, in Dicko's room in the hotel. I went off to the toilet. Stayed there quite a long time. And Dicko, after they'd left, and Dicko went there and realized, holy shit. There is a 1 foot long green turd stuck in my toilet. It's quite clear that this person has not had a dump for about 2 weeks. And this is what they've delivered, and it's green.
Oh.
And he is there. He said, he went out, he had to find a stick. And he's there with a stick trying to get this thing down his toilet. And it wouldn't break up. It was just rock solid. And it had come out of someone's gut. So that's what Survivor does to you.
I'm just picturing Dicko now with the stick saying, play hard, play safe, and play to win as he's trying to
But
get
don't do it in my toilet.
All right, okay. I'm so glad that we've gotten you on at the beginning of this season now, because my goal over the next however many episodes and however many of these players we get on, who did the shit in Dicko's toilet? Was it you, Fiona Horn? Was it you, Nicole? I want to know.
Oh, jeez.
Wow.
Good luck,
Okay.
Good luck getting that name.
Good luck also ending an episode on any better terms than that. David, mate, this has been a thrill to chat. We've learnt so much. This has really set our season up on a high standard.
Reliving it. I didn't. They're full of memories I didn't know I had.
It's crazy to think that, not only do we have the man behind Who Dares Wins, The Mole, all these shows, the guy who basically brought the Olympics to Sydney, and here you are talking about a show that you probably even barely remember. Sometimes you did, but it's a huge honour to have you here to learn about this. We really appreciate you sharing these stories, and I look forward to David Mason Archives coming soon for the next 12 weeks of your life as well, with all the things we're going to get you on.
Yeah. Lovely. Well, it's great chatting to you guys. Thank you very much indeed for your time, and hope it's been interesting for all.
It's been amazing, David. Thanks a lot.
Okay. Well, cheers.